started. Good morning all. Welcome to the General Scrutiny Committee held this day on Tuesday the 10th of August. I'm Jonathan Lester, Councillor Jonathan Lester, the Chair of Scrutiny, and I'll be chairing this meeting today. First of all, before the meeting starts, we'll go to the fire and emergency evacuation. For those present in the meeting, in the event of a fire or an emergency, the alarm bell will ring continuously. We should vacate the building in an orderly manner through the nearest available exit and to make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda papers and other relevant information of this meeting are available for public viewing on Herefordshire Council's website. Please note the numbering of the agenda pack has gone awry, therefore when referring to sections in the report, please indicate the relevant paragraph. Sorry about that. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and making a recording. To ensure that the recording quality is maintained, please speak as clearly as possible and keep background noise to a minimum. Please ensure that mobile phones and other devices are turned to silent. Following feedback from members, we will be trialling in the 3 counties a speaker system to ensure that everyone can be heard. And there will also be a roaming mic. So please make sure that after you've used the mic, you ensure that you sanitized it by using the wipes provided. Others are permitted to film and photograph and record public meetings, provided that it does not take up and disrupt any business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public who become present, who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, then they will have to indicate as and when they attend the meeting. Voting will be undertaken by a show of hands today in this room. Only committee members may vote. We have a number of people in attendance as virtual participants, and can I request that they use the raise hand function within the system if they wish to contribute to the meeting. To ensure that those watching the live stream or the recording know who you are, can I ask each person to introduce themselves when they are invited to speak during the meeting, unless of course I introduce you myself. So move on to, can we confirm, can I ask the clerk, can we confirm which we have in attendance in the meeting? Warm welcome to Councillor Gemma Davies, who is the Cabinet Member for Commissioning, Procurement and Assets. And we have other Cabinet members in attendance and the Leader of the Council, I believe, but can we confirm that they are in attendance via Zoom?
Yes, Chair, I can confirm that Councillor Harvey, Cabinet Member for Finance, Corporate Services and Planning, is attending virtually, and the Leader of the Council, Councillor Hitchner, is attending virtually. We also have officers present, Neil Taylor, Interim Director of Economy and Place, Sarah Jowett, Head of Programme Management Office, and Helen Beale, Senior Estates Manager.
Thank you very much. And I can also confirm that other councillors in attendance, a very warm welcome to the Mayor of Hereford, City Council, Councillor Paul Stevens, and also a member of this council, Councillor Polly Andrews. So now we go on to the official items on the agenda. First of all, number 1, which is apologies for absence.
Chair, we've had 1 apologies for absence, Councillor Barry Durkin.
You, and second item on the agenda is name substitutes.
Chair, we've had 1 substitute, Councillor Paul Rowe, Councillor Barry Durkin.
Thank you, Councillor Rowe. Very welcome. It's good to see you.
Yep.
Thank you for your attendance. Item 3 is declarations of interest. Do any members wish to declare any Schedule 1, Schedule 2 or other interest in any agenda item? Whether or not it has any reference on the meeting, I would just like to declare that I used to work in the town hall some years ago now, but, quite a few years ago now, but I used to work there for about 6 years, I think. Right, go on to agenda item 4, which is the minutes. The minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of July are included in the agenda for approval. No matters of accuracy have been notified to the monitoring officer, so I move that the minutes be signed as a correct record. All in favour? Yeah. Okay. So of the 4 councillors that were in attendance, they're all in agreement. Thank you. 1 abstention from Councillor Rose. Next item on the agenda is questions from members of the public, but I can report that no questions have been received from members of the public on this occasion. Agenda item 6 is questions from councillors, and I can also confirm that no questions have been received from councillors of this council. So we now go on to the main item of the agenda, which is the issue of the future of the ownership of the town hall, potential freehold disposal of the town hall, and the purpose of the item to be considered is the disposal of the town hall in the open market for the context of the council's overall strategy on asset management. So do we have, is it Neil Taylor who's going to talk us through an introductory item?
Yep, when I finally find the mute button. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Lovely. Okay. So a very brief introduction, then I'll pass on to Sarah Jowett, who's our acting property lead at this moment in time. So the issue of what happens to the town hall has been floating around for quite some time. There have been a couple of aborted community asset transfer attempts, one for the town council and one for another organisation. I'd just like to be absolutely clear that there has been no decision to dispose, no formal decision to dispose of the town hall. The council is looking at its asset strategy and looking at what buildings we have, what needs to be spent on them, the quality of accommodation that it provides to its occupants. And as we move obviously into a post-COVID era of space and flexible working and all that sort of thing, we're looking very closely at where our people operate from. So in that context, and just being absolutely clear, there is no decision. We would welcome the committee's views on potential uses for the town hall. The question of does it get sold on the open market, comments on that, if you would. And we'd love to hear from the town council, obviously, and various other people about what their views are. So I don't know whether you've anything to add to that, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah Jowett, the property lead at the moment. No, not really. We are in a period of review, and clearly there is a community asset transfer that's currently being progressed as an option with the City Council, which is subject to a business case being put forward. We've tried to provide some bits and pieces of information as requested by the committee to try and give a flavour, and I have looked more closely at the condition survey reports that were done as well. So I have a little bit more information on that if anyone would like to go into that. But ultimately, there are building issues there. It's very unusual to have a building without building issues that do need to be addressed. And at the moment, we are seeking a way forward as to how we review all of our properties across the Herefordshire Council and what we do with them.
Thank you for that. Those comments. I have a hand just gone up. Councillor Summers.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My main concern at the present time is the future. We have a number of buildings, two in particular that are in pretty sad shape of repair. A lot of it is from dampness. And I'm very surprised that we don't have dehumidifiers in all our buildings, especially the older ones that have a lot of black mold, etc. Black mold is dangerous, it's not good for health, and we have people working in these conditions to start with. So I would like to ask the property, why don't we have dehumidifiers in the buildings? It would clean a lot of the dampness quite quickly.
There you go, a direct question. Dehumidifiers, are they in operation? And if not, why not?
I think it's a very difficult question to answer, sorry, Councillor, but if we could have a list of the buildings that you feel need them, then certainly I'll look into that and get back to you.
Sorry, can I just ask, thank you for that answer. Is there a damp issue in the town hall?
Sorry, Chair, that was to me, sorry. We understand that there is some water ingress there at the moment, and yes, we are. I believe that our maintenance team are in discussion with the town clerk, the city clerk at the moment about some remedial actions to clear out rainwater goods, etc. That's the message I've been given this morning.
Okay, thank you for that, because I think Councillor Summons's challenge was that if there are damp issues, wouldn't it be a good idea to use the dehumidifiers whilst we're waiting for the issues to be resolved?
So it was allied to that. You said water ingress, and
Councillor Rowe.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry, big jump there. So water ingress, you said. Water ingress and damp are two different things. So I think the question was about damp, which has health implications. Water ingress doesn't necessarily, especially as you said, rainwater. So I think going back to what my colleague Councillor Summers said, is the damp in the building? Is the black mould in the building rather than water ingress?
I know that we're waiting for a technical report on the dry rot issues that are there at the moment. So I'm assuming that will all be covered in the technical report that we're waiting for.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that answer. And if I could go back to Councillor Summers, if we might want to pen down a recommendation there for when we come to making our...
Well, there's definitely a recommendation. I saw for myself the black mold.
Yeah.
I visited it May. The state of the third floor of that building, in the town hall in particular, is absolutely disgraceful. And we're spending X amount of cleaning, £49,000 a year, I believe, on that building. The third floor is a disgrace. I'm not sure. I wouldn't put my worst enemy in there to live. And I think we really need to be looking at the upkeep of our buildings and making sure that this is done properly, because I don't think it is, to be frank. We've had trouble with the shower halls being repaired 2 or 3 times. It's still falling apart. It needs $7 million, I think, to fix it. We have a town hall that is a beautiful building and it's being let go by, I don't know who's responsible for that, but it is not very good. So we need to sort this out and start with just by putting dehumidifiers in. I put one in my home when I first moved back, and it worked miracles. And it's surprising how fast it does work. So I think we need to be on top of this right away.
Okay, well, there's quite a few points there to form recommendations, so we'll come back to those. But I think one of the salient points of this particular point is the bit about dehumidifiers and dampness. So let's keep that in mind for when we make our recommendations. Councillor Stark.
Yes, Chair. Sorry, I'm totally confused about this meeting today. I really don't know what we've been told to decide upon. we have a property strategy dating back to 2016, coming the period 2016 to 2020, and I've read it, Chair, and I've raised a number of questions with you on it. I can run through them at some stage, but I really am trying to get my mind around what we are trying to achieve today. I mean, if you look at the property strategy that has been attached to the meeting, there clearly was an outcome in that strategy to keep the town hall and the Shire Hall fit for public use. I mean, sections 2.5 and 3.7, I would actually point to. There was also in 5.4 and 5.8 reference to a maintenance plan, which would be obviously, I think, essential in order to make sure that the two outcomes that were put in the property strategy were met. So really one of the issues I have today is what is the outcome we're actually trying to seek? And we cannot take a decision in isolation on the town hall without looking at the impact on the Shire Hall. Because if you spend money in the town hall, then that money is no longer available for the Shire Hall. And therefore you have two competing, I think, demands by assets which need to be combined and looked at together and not decided in isolation. This is the problem. Too often in this council, we get decisions presented to us in isolation. We don't look at them in the round. And if we go back to the property strategy for 2016 to 2020, it clearly had as an aim those two outcomes: to keep both buildings in public use and to have maintenance plans supporting that aim. And I think that's what we should be looking at to achieve. And the only way you can achieve that, Chair, is by looking at the two buildings together. I don't think you should be looking at the town hall in isolation. That's my view.
Okay, so thank you, Councillor Stark. Just to unpack some of the points that you've made there, that the decision about the town hall is something that's forthcoming. When that actual decision will actually be made, don't know. We will come to Councillor Davis in a minute. Perhaps you can help us with that. So this meeting is a response to the fact that a decision about the town hall will soon be forthcoming. But the purpose of the meeting is to address that issue. But the scope of the meeting is for the committee to decide.
Right.
And if you think that the remit should be widened, and if you think that such decisions cannot be made in isolation, then that is for you to put to this meeting for the committee to think, is that the right way to go forward? And this is the right venue to try and establish whether that should be the case. And I have great sympathy with that view, because it doesn't just involve one historic building, it involves other buildings, and the strategy involves an overall strategy for all the buildings that the council has responsibility.
If I could just add, Chair, it begs the question, why have a property strategy if it isn't driving the decision making in the council? As a context, that's the point I'm trying to make here.
Yes.
And if we can widen it, I certainly would like to touch upon serious questions I have about the way the property strategy has been taken forward over the last 4 or 5 years as well.
And it's exactly at this meeting where you have the forum to raise those concerns and explore them. And I can't think of a better meeting to raise them than this one. So, let's keep that in mind as we progress through this meeting. So I've got Councillor Bowen and then Councillor Bowes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This sorry tale goes back a long way, I think. And it is a tale not told by an idiot and not full of sound and fury, but full of depressing outcomes and depressing facts, I think. I think from the very time of the Herefordshire Council's institution in 1998, both the Shire Hall and the Town Hall have suffered from very, very poor maintenance, if any at all, virtually, a little. And the Town Hall has had some more, perhaps in the Shire Hall, but I think that maintenance was very limited. And despite pleas from the contractors at one stage to be allowed to do extra work to preserve prevent the ingress of water, etc., they're prevented from doing so. It seems a very poor policy indeed. And And I'm not quite sure who was responsible for that. I don't think we'll ever probably know. But it was a very unfortunate outcome that led to the present state of the town hall. And his right worshipful, our mayor, showed us round, and it was extremely sad to see the extraordinary amount of damage being done to the windows, to the walls, to the wallpaper. And that was in the mayor's parlour, which is in better state than much of the building. But the windows are definitely very deficient. And in other bits of it, we saw the results of years of neglect, of hopeless management, I think. Very sad. And I'm sure that Councillor Andrews and the Mayor will give us more information on this, give us some of the history of it. And it was a building that was actually given to the citizens of Hereford and built by them, I think, at vast expense at the time. But what a grand and wonderful building. And one of our duties today, I think, is to point a way to keeping it in public ownership for the public and to be used in a very fit and proper way for things like the registry system. The registrars work there, and they have an excellent room where the Jacobean panelling and the ceiling itself, the plasterwork ceiling, gives a wonderful atmosphere, whether it be for weddings or citizenship ceremonies. And I was taking part in a citizenship ceremony yesterday, and it was very touching to see how much the place was appreciated. It's also central and very easy of access, and that I would suggest is very important. There are other services there as well, such as the parking services, very convenient for them too. But to try and say that this is not the right place for those services is ridiculous. I think we should fight strongly to keep the registrars, the town council, etc., where they are now. It's the right and proper place for them. I would advocate that. And also advocate a proper policy of repair and maintenance. It's ongoing. We have to involve a lot of money now, and whether it's 2 million or 4 million or however many million it is, but at some stage that nettle's got to be grasped. And unless you do, you might as well put in the demolition experts now. And that would be a disaster, I think, for the city of Hereford and Herefordshire generally. So let us consider these matters, and perhaps we might hear some extra stuff from Councillor Andrews and Councillor the Mayor himself, who is a great expert on these matters too. And he was very good to show us around, but he was also very worrying. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. I don't think anybody here or across the county of Herefordshire would disagree that the building should be repaired, retained and used by the people of Herefordshire. I don't see that anybody would have any issue with that. The issue is the endless amount of money that would be needed to repair our listed buildings. The fact that our corporate strategy hasn't even included listed buildings in there. The fact that it needs updating, and the fact that we need to move forward and consult our residents and say, what do you want? It's okay saying it might cost 4 million or it might cost 6 million, but that's not the only listed building that we have. And if you spend 4 or 6 million on that, and you need to spend another 7 or 8 million on that, on the Shire Hall, that has massive implications for the residents of Herefordshire. That has implications for the precept. And that's something that we need to go out and consult our residents on and say, do you want to increase your precept so that we can make up the money for this? Nobody wants to see the buildings in a state of disrepair. And I think personally, it's appalling the fact that the buildings have been left to get in that state, and shows to me that the council, in my opinion, doesn't have the skills, doesn't have the money to maintain these buildings. Yes, they should be kept in public ownership or the public allowed to use them freely for things that would benefit residents of Herefordshire, but there is not a bottomless pit. We do not get any grants for those buildings. Third parties can apply for grants, can bring life back into those buildings. That is something that we have obviously struggled to do since we took over the building in 1998. So there are lots of issues, in my opinion, that we need to look at. There have been lots of errors along the way. Why haven't we done this? Why haven't we done that? But one of my recommendations would be that we actually go out to the residents of Herefordshire and say to them, these buildings are going to cost you X thousands of pounds or millions of pounds to maintain. Is that something you're happy to do with your precept? And also, I would suggest that Hereford City write to their residents and say to them, this is a plan of action. Would you be happy to increase your precept to cover X, Y, and Z? We're speaking here as though we know what people want. We need to go out and consult those people and say, are you happy for your costs to be increased to cover these buildings? But my main concern is I don't believe we've got the skills or the knowledge to maintain those buildings, and we definitely don't have the funding. And I think we need to look at what ways going forward can we improve things for the benefit of our residents and for the county as a whole. And I've got lots of questions, but I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes. Well, there's a clear recommendation there, which is consult residents. So we'll add that to our recommendations. We can come back to that though, and we're considering the recommendations as a whole. I'm conscious we have Councillor Davies here who wants to speak. What I think I'll do is if we can have some brief comments from Cabinet members, the three in attendance, Councillor Davies, Harvey and Hitchener, and then if we can go to the Mayor and Councillor Holly Andrews, then we can then return to our line of questioning as a committee, if that's okay. So, Councillor Davies.
Firstly, thank you for putting this on the agenda. I think it's really important. I think it's not something that's been done since certainly since I've been looking at the in my portfolio area for assets. I'm struggling to see when there has been a full asset review, and I think that that's what's required. That's what's underway at the moment, looking at what buildings we have, what they should be used for, are we the right owners for it? And this is one of those decisions moving forward regarding the town hall. We've said that no decision's been made. Actually, if you go back to the budget and you go back to the Better Ways of Working paper, it went through our budget, it went through full, and it said about the disposal of the town hall. It said about the disposal of the town hall to either a third party via a community asset transfer or disposal on the open market. So it was agreed by everybody. I think it's right that we call it in, that we brought it to scrutiny to identify what is the right route for it. My ultimate part of the whole thing with the town hall is that the right people own it. And my gut feeling is that the council aren't the right people to own it. I think you all went round on a tour and you saw what was going, you saw what it looked like. And I really struggle because culture is in my portfolio as well, so heritage buildings, etc. But what comes with that is significant outlays. We know that. Now, go through the budgets year on year. Property never gets the amount that it asks for property maintenance. It never does, because there are so many conflicting demands on what we spend our money on. And that's why I think that we're in the position that we are. I think some of it has to do with the contractual arrangements that we've had with external maintenance and property, and whether or not percentage increases are included on that. And we'll refer to Councillor Bowes, where she just said about, we need to ask the residents. We did ask the residents in the budget consultation last year. It came as the least amount of many that residents wanted to spend money on was about spending money on our buildings. In fact, high up in their priorities was the reduction in back office finances, and one of the most popular was about reducing our asset base. So it did come out in the budget consultation, and I hate that that's the case. I absolutely do. I would be willing to pay more in my council tax to pay for heritage buildings. I absolutely would, but that option's not available for me. I think Councillor Bowes is exactly right. We should be asking residents about it. I think that it's on a much wider scale, i.e. all of the buildings that we're proposing to do. I agree with Councillor Stark on this. It feels wrong to take it in isolation, because for me there are other properties here. We have the old Priory in Leominster as an example. So it's not just about the town hall, and it's not just about Hereford City. It's about the wider Herefordshire and how we spend our money the right way. So I'm just really grateful for any comments and questions. You know, I'm always going to be open to scrutiny. So welcome any questions, and I'll answer as much as I can. Worth stating that Sarah Jowett has only recently taken over property, so she's got other colleagues with her. So if she has to pass it over, it's not through lack of knowledge, it's the fact that she's only recently taken over that particular area. So we do have Helen Beale who sat with us. And I really do want to give thanks to the City Council and to Encore for their continued attempt to try and make this happen. And I look forward to hearing the debate today and your recommendations.
Thank you very much for that contribution, Councillor Davis. Councillor Stark.
Yes, Chair, following on from what Councillor Davis said, I think we should have that recommendation from the committee that this decision should not be taken in isolation, but should be taken as a whole in terms of all the listed buildings that we're looking at across the county, because you end up robbing something else if you put money into this one building. And who's to say that our residents think in Ross that the Hereford Town Hall should have the priority, for example, rather than Shire Hall, rather than something else? So it's not just about asking residents about where they want to spend money here. It's asking residents about the whole package and seeing whether they do want to spend money and what would their priorities be as well. Because I can't say that my residents in my ward want to spend X million on the town hall in Hereford. I just don't know because I've not asked them.
So, Councillor Stark, can I ask for the clarification? I think you're because we were looking at the asset plan for all buildings.
Yes.
But now perhaps I think it would be a good idea if we, in making your point about not making a decision in isolation, if we ring fence it to listed buildings,
Yes.
then that would be a helpful clarification, I think, because we could end up talking about.
I'm happy with that, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's your idea.
That's what
Yeah.
property strategy was aiming at in terms of those two buildings.
Right, okay. So if we can make sure that that recommendation is focused on listed buildings, that's a really helpful demarcation, I think. Councillor Bowes, sorry, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree about looking at all listed buildings. But I think the reason that we're here today is to look at this one because this is the only one that's being proposed as being disposed of in the open market. I pick on a couple of things that were said. Councillor Bowes said that we don't have the skill. There is the skill in the county to look after Grade 2 listed. There's the skill to look after Grade 1 listed. There are some superbly talented trades in this county. Whether Councillor Bowes meant within the council itself.
Sorry, just to clarify, I meant within the council.
Yeah, I thought you did.
Yeah.
Within the council itself, that doesn't surprise me because it's something that we've probably always gone out to get consultants in to do. But there is the skill within the county, and that should be in itself a almost social value. Whether those skilled trades would want to do work for the local authority, I think that's indicative. There's a reason why they're not registered on any portal or any site for bidding for work. That may be a conversation that somebody higher up wants to have with those skills. We always seem to rely upon the same trades, and if I go back about 18 months ago when some work was carried out on the Shire Hall, a listed building, there was no listed building consent gained. And if that had been somebody in the private sector, and I highlighted this at a planning meeting, if that had been somebody in the private sector doing that without necessary, there would have been all sorts of issues and threats of prosecution against them. We can't take action against ourselves, and I think there's a lot of red faces at the time. But I don't know what work involved or whether that led to any of the issues. I'm going to leave that there. There was a couple of things that I want to ask questions about. We received agenda item 7, but document A, Town Hall Data General Scrutiny Committee. It's just one piece of paper. It says finances. Figures are based upon 2019-2020. 2020-2021 figures are unreliable due to COVID as a true reflection of usual states. Income shown is 2021 as the variance is not significant. Why then did we not have 2019-2020 income shown as well? Because this is only showing us a worst case scenario. I can only liken this to when the planning committee turn up on site to have a look at a proposed site for housing, and it's covered with broken down caravans, felled trees, piles of rubble. You have a completely different image if you turn up on site to look at the buildings, the proposed site, if it's green grass and nice flowers growing. These figures presented, it would have been very, very simple to put forward the income for 2019-2020 as well. It's pretty obvious, any business, and the town hall does have a lot of weddings, it has a lot of functions, there's always people in and out there. It does have a lot going on throughout the year. It would have been nice to see it. It would have been very, very simple to use, I'm sure, and that would have given a true picture. I'm astounded at the running costs. Building and maintenance, 48 grand. Well, yeah, that's £1,000 a week. That's about right. But cleaning, £49,000. I've done a quick calculation, and at national minimum wage, let's be generous. Let's go to the living wage. That's more than three full-time equivalent posts. When I ask what the occupants of the town hall are doing, are you partying every night, chucking sausage rolls at each other? I find it incredible. Why on earth? If it's contracted out, it's pretty indicative of those figures that there should be full-time employees doing the work. And if any of that is to do with damp or cleaning mould, shouldn't it go into the building and maintenance costs? I'm astounded by that. I can't think of any building that would need £1,000 a week cleaning. And if it is something to do with cleaning up after weddings, isn't that chargeable? So it should be shown in the income. I also think that the estimated cost to repair is 1.8. I'm going to double that to 3.6 because that's what always ends up. If we wanted to replace the building and we wanted to have a civic centre with history and we wanted to house maybe 4 or 5 county services as well as the city council, we would be looking at replacing that. We'd be looking at buying something or building something. And I'd like to make a comparison between bringing the town hall up to date and all the enthusiasm, because I was on the city council until 2 years ago. And I will say the enthusiasm within that group of volunteers, city councillors are volunteers, it abounds. And there is a lot of energy there to get things done. No moreover within our current mayor, who is extremely keen to see things change. But I would say if we were looking to replace the building, it would be costing many, many more millions. I totally agree that there's been an underinvestment in property. It has been right across the board. But when you sat there looking down the barrel of a gun 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, where the money was going and where the pressures were, building maintenance and historic building maintenance weren't at the foremost. People were at the foremost of our thoughts. So I'd also like to know, with the proposal to dispose of, I think that is the important word here, dispose of, whether it's going to be sold or transferred. In my mind, when there was the criticism about, it came out into social media going back about a month, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, I was defending it while driving my cab and saying, no. What happens is it'll go to a community interest group, we'll be able to apply for funding, and excuse me, hand in hand with the very excellent city council, all work will be done. It'll take a few years, but all work will be done. But now we're looking at open market disposal. In my mind, and for you who know, I'm using the little bit of a business head I've got, I can only see one buyer for that place, and that buyer would not see it as a civic building the minute they got the keys. Everybody would be out, and it would be turned into a Wetherspoons. That's how I see it. I do not see any other buyer for it. We don't have multi-millionaire benefactors who are going to buy it, do it up and hand the keys back to the good of their heart. I see it coming out of public accessibility. I then think, where is the city council going to go? I'm thinking, where are all those services going to go? but I was a little bit concerned with the disposal. Does it mean the disposal of purely the town hall or the ancillary? Because, and I'm sure the mayor will, Councillor Stevens will correct me if I'm wrong, when the asset transfer to the city council originally was proposed, some 4 years, it might have been before that, but I'm thinking back about 4 years, they also included number 8 St Owen Street, which itself is a huge building. I can remember at the time getting really, really enthused at one of these meetings and saying, do you know what, we could renovate that, we could turn that into holiday lets. How beautiful that be? City centre, come and take part and live and see what goes on in this historic city. At the time, there was very little enthusiasm for that, but I do let things run away with me sometimes. But it'd be interesting to know what part we're deciding to sell. What part is it? You know, the actual red line for the contract. It would be interesting to see that. I myself, I think it would be a sad day to let history, that is the town hall, go. I don't see an awful lot of public support for it, but that's only the vociferous support you see. There's an awful silent majority. And as Councillor Davis said, in the consultation, it came bottom. Maybe people were just looking at the important ones and ticked it as the bottom one, rather than considering what it meant. I think there's an awful lot to consider. Would I be in favour of selling on open market the city centre historic building, which in 5 or 10 or 20 years' time, we will think, what on earth did we sell that for? At the moment, no, it wouldn't be. But I'm here to be educated, my friends.
Thank you, Councillor Rowan. You made a comment at the beginning about the finances and the...
Yeah, I'd like to see income for 2019-2020 rather than the worst case scenario.
Okay, can I go to Neil Taylor? Is that we ask for that information? Is that available? Is that...
Excuse me. I'm sure that information is available. I think the explanation of why it wasn't provided was given, but you can certainly have it. Not a problem.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. The running costs for the same year. So why wasn't it automatically put in? You know, if you say it's given, I'd like it to be explained that.
Sorry, Chair.
Do you want to take that one?
Yeah. It's Sarah Jarrett here, Chair. I've just got the figures up now. I believe it was the clearly COVID caused a huge variance in budgets, so it didn't seem appropriate to use all the figures for that, but I could have used the 19-20 income figures, absolutely, and I apologise if that's caused any concern. But the 19-20, just looking at it now, the income, sorry, I'm just trying to get this right now. So the service charges were 12,418, and in 2021 they were 11,864. The rental income in 19-20 was 25,592, and in 2021 it was 25,809. So clearly it's the other income which is the difference. And in 19-20 it was just over £6,000. So you can see that clearly during COVID it was 190. So it just felt that it was more sensible to use the full year figures pre-COVID, and say they are negligible, the actual figures, but I can make sure that you have those in front of you. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I've listened to the figures that you've said, and I understand the point, but I think in future for all committees, especially scrutiny committees, when we ask for the financial situation, it's best to give all the information you've got. You can caveat it with all kinds of references to this is not a true reflection of a year or whatever, but it's important to ensure that we get all of the information so that we can take that on board. And that's a plea to any officer about any issue that comes before scrutiny. And that gives us the full picture, even though there are reasons for explaining those figures. Right, okay. Councillor Rowan, you made a couple of points there that sound like there could be recommendations. One in particular, disposal of number 8, but
Yeah, it would be good. This is at the moment, and Councillor Davis will put us right on this probably. It's what would be on the red line for disposal, for sale, what part of it, what value are we putting on it? Are we including selling the car park? Does that go with it? All these things. Sometimes you look at the big picture and the little ancillary bits are the bits with value. They're the ones without value. They're the profit. I don't like using, they're the surplus part. I don't know which is the best terminology to use in this situation. But I just want the bit of fresh thinking. If it is going to be sold, let's look and see what bits have to be sold and not. Because at the moment, number 8 holds licensing, and there's all sorts of people, all sorts of services within the town hall. We've got to find somewhere else for them. Now, are we going to find somewhere else for them in the existing? I mean, I understand the one estate, but are we going to be looking to rent somewhere else for these services to go and leave the poor old city council out on a limb? I realise the city council have got their own reserves, and they are quite a healthy council, and they could probably even help contribute. And I think that would be something that would be a further conversation that Councillor Davis can have with the mayor and the city clerk. But it would be a good idea to identify what exactly would be proposed to be sold, rather than just take what was offered to the city council as a transfer and just say, yeah, okay, well, that's what we're selling, go. Because there's an awful lot of bits added on, and I myself, with certain ways of thinking, would think that maybe it could be slimmed down if it's just that building that is a problem, or even, no, a bit of clever thinking outside the box there. But it would be good to make sure that what goes up for sale isn't exactly the same thing that was offered as a community transfer to the city council.
okay, thank you. Right, so Councillor Davis wants to come back on that point. Then it's Councillor Bowen's turn to come in, and then I'm going to invite the other cabinet members if they want to make a comment at this stage. And then I would like to go to the mayor and Councillor Andrews. So if we can pursue on those lines, but Councillor Davis first.
Yeah, it's just to come back on Councillor Rowan's question. So I think it's really important to just say, at this moment in time, we are still developing a community asset transfer at this moment in time. So right now, that's what's on the table, and we're working with the City Council to make that happen. That community asset transfer covers the town hall itself, number 8, the car park and the garage. So the only part of the car park that wouldn't have is the bit behind number 10, because obviously if anybody's going to go into that, and there are conversations with other parties about that particular one, that they would be interested in a community asset transfer. It's a third party, so I can't say who, but community interest. But they would need car parking for their particular people that are using that area. So those are the areas that we're talking about with regards to this transfer. If it was to go for full disposal, so if this doesn't work out with the community asset transfer process, the disposal could look at that and or any other combination. To be honest, we're not selling it to make a profit. We're selling it because of the ongoing revenue costs to maintain such a building, including the backlog maintenance. So whatever achieves the right buyer, the best buyer for that particular building. But I hate talking about it because it makes it sound like it's a fait accompli, and it's not. We're trying to get it through on a community asset transfer basis. But those are the buildings that are currently within that particular portfolio for the community asset transfer.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I do think I have much sympathy with the idea of Councillor Rose that this should remain in public ownership. There's a lot more we could do with the place too. The facilities, I don't think we can properly and keenly market it. I'm sure we can make much more money out of them and make the place cover its costs and more fairly readily, I think. But also, I've had members of the public coming up to me and begging that the town hall should be kept in public ownership for the use of the public. And it was very touching that they actually bothered to make the effort to come and see me, or come up to me, and make a very strong plea. It wasn't just one person, it was several, of very, very different sections of the building. And I think this should be kept in mind very strongly. Also, once you've sold your assets, that's it. Your family silver is gone, even if it's expensive family silver to maintain, but it is all gone. And the alternatives, you should consider very carefully what you're offering as that. Are you going to have to put registrars, city council, etc., into some buildings miles away from the centre, no longer relevant to the city itself? That town hall is very, very important to the city. It is an iconic part of the city. It was given to the city by some very worthy assistants. And I think it is very important that it should remain in public ownership in one way or another. And that doesn't include being part of the community asset transfer, but that should always specify that this is an important public building and at the service of the public and for the use of the public.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Just,
That's a recommendation there too, I think.
okay, a recommendation to keep it as a public building.
Yes, very much
Okay.
so.
Councillor Summers, and then I would really like to go to the other cabinet members to give them an opportunity to speak. Councillor Summers?
I'm an old businessman. I just look at return on investment and what is the building worth? What is the replacement value of the building? As an asset, what is it worth? Does anybody have those figures?
We should have a valuation.
Do we have them?
So
Is it possible for officers to provide a valuation?
I'm sorry, Chair. I can't hear very well at times. On what property, sorry?
On the town hall?
If you look at the data sheet, the town hall is valued at 75,000, and then you've got number 8, number 10, the garage. So the total for the entire site is 365,000.
I don't know, council houses worth more than that.
I'm sorry, I struggle to.
Yeah. Can I make an offer?
I struggle to. I should imagine each Norwegian marble cobble is probably
I'll buy it. Can I buy it?
But worth more than that. Anyway, we'll come back to that point. But okay, so we've got a valuation there. Councillor Hitchener, Councillor Harvey, did you want to make any comments at the stage?
Yes, if I may. I think it's an interesting question from Councillor Summers there, because valuation could be anything, couldn't it? It's partly how much would someone pay to have the property? We don't know. It might not be possible to find anyone to buy it because of the liabilities, in which case the value of the property is absolutely zero. The replacement cost, yes, it could be several millions to replace it, to build it back. A breakup, you can break it up. Yes, you could sell the marble, put columns and things like that, but they're also property. And I'm not, but so it's not a simple answer as to what it's worth. What is in our books for is £70,000. But for me, it's an iconic building. It's an important building. It's something we'd like to retain. But it's a matter of who is going to retain it. Is it going to be the county that keeps it, or the city, or maybe a community interest group? And for each group, it's kind of the same question: is how do we get it back into working order? What are the costs going to be? We've had an estimate of the immediate costs of 1.8 million, and Councillor Rowan is quite right in saying, you know, you may well have to double that figure once you start digging things around. The mechanical stuff may cost another £1 million. I think I'd heard that figure. So yeah, let's say 3.6 million to get it immediately into a proper state of repair. That's ignoring all the other costs, because we're only looking at immediate. So anybody who takes it on takes on a huge liability, and that at the moment is a liability of the council, the county council. And we are considering, and this is where the scrutiny committee can perhaps help as to how we cover that cost. Do we take it out of reserves? Do we cut other costs in other areas? Do we generate income from somewhere else? So I'm interested to know whether the scrutiny committee have any suggestions as to how the county council could retain it. Now, we have said to the city council, we will give you the property for £1. But the city council, for exactly the same reasons that we have a problem, they don't want to take it on because of the liability. So then we go to a third alternative, which is this community interest group. Well, they have the same problem. They've looked at it, they had examined it. They said, no, it's too much of a liability to take on. So that is, to my mind, that is the problem. We all want to keep it, but no one wants to take on the liability. And what is the responsibility of us as ward councillors, as county councillors towards this building? Because it is a liability. It is not an asset in my simple term. It's a liability. And the city have said, we don't want it. The county is saying, scrutiny committee, we think we can't keep the liability. So one alternative is to dispose of it. So that's what we said, we're putting it on the table. That's an alternative, is to dispose of it. And that no decision has been made. And we'd like the scrutiny committee to examine and say, okay, we think that these are some ideas that we might consider as a county council to cover the liability, which is what it basically is. It would be great to think that some community interest group could take it on, but as I've said, one group has been approached, and they took a long time. They looked at it very carefully, but quite rightly, as trustees of that group, they said, no, it's too much of an expense. It's too much of a risk. Now, is it possible that there are members of the community out there who would freely give to a newly set up organisation? Now, the minimum that's needed, I'd have thought, was at least £2 million. The problem is people who have that sort of money, they don't want to just put the money into a bucket and it kind of disappears. They want to see a good reason why it should be kept, some sort of business plan to explain what the benefit is of keeping that building. Because people who have high net worth and have that kind of money, they want to see a good reason for doing it. And I would dearly love it to go into some sort of civic trust with people from the community putting money in to keep it. And Councillor Bowen has mentioned that people are very keen for us to keep it. Well, if we keep it, because it's a liability, we're going to have to increase the local taxation in order to recover it. So you can't just ask people, say, would you like to keep it? And people say, yes, we desperately want to keep it, without being a bit more realistic and say, okay, so how are we going to pay for it? Because it is a liability. It is not an asset in pure financial terms. So I welcome the contribution from the scrutiny committee, but I'd welcome some ideas as to how do you think we can keep it? Because that's what we are struggling with. How can we encourage some third party like a community interest group to take it on? How can we work with the city council to come up with a solution? That's what we are struggling with. That's what we're trying to achieve. So any ideas from scrutiny committee as to what things we should be looking at, that we want to find ideas we haven't explored. I think we've been quite careful in looking at ideas. We've been treading water for the last year. We're being patient, but ultimately a decision has to be made, and it's a very difficult decision. So, whatever you can do to help would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hitchener. Councillor Rowan, did you have a question? And then
it's just picking up really. We've heard the leader just speak and talk about finances and liabilities, and Councillor Davis as well, but this authority and this administration put an awful lot on social value. I haven't heard anybody talk about the social value of the building. I'm sure it's utmost in the cabinet member and the leader's mind, but looking at it from the city council's point of view, they're sat there at the moment with the possibility of doing something about it, but a bit hands tied. but there's no mention of social value about this building. It's a case of either it washes its face or it's got to go. But if it does go onto the open market, and I'm sorry to say that Councillor Davis said a few minutes ago that at the moment there is a community interest possibility. Today's agenda item number 7 says freehold disposal of the town hall, to consider proposals for the disposal of the town hall in the open market within the context of the council's overall asset management strategy. Open market to means there's a for sale sign goes outside. So either the headline for today's agenda is wrong, or it's heading towards a fait accompli that there will be a for sale sign outside the place. So really, what social value does this administration put on this building, if any, and which is wrong, the headline for the agenda, or the fact that there is a possibility of a community interest company or a charitable or any interest group coming forward to put their hand out. I do have a bit of an idea, but it's a bit of a long shot, and I'm sure it will be shot down by our section 1 officer, but thank you, Chair.
Okay, and did you want to share that idea, or?
I just think the local authority through the Public Works Loan Board could have a facility for a community interest company, which is partly controlled by the City Council. And I'm sure the City Council would be happy to fund the repayments over a very long period of time, along with any other income generated through their enthusiasm and their social entrepreneurship, if you like. I think at the moment, Public Works Loan Board, Councillor Harvey sat there, money is cheap, is it not, Councillor Harvey? And I think it was a guaranteed income over a period of time. We will rue the day that we can borrow money at 1 and 1.5%. It's something that we should certainly look at. And I'm sure the City Council would, not speaking for you now, Mr. Mayor, but I'm sure that they would be eager to look at any avenue, but it's just a facility. I don't know how that would get around the grant funding pot, but if it's a facility made available by the county that has got zero cost to the people of Herefordshire, I think it's something that could be put forward.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowe. Councillor Summers and Councillor Wilding, are your questions directly to the Leader of the Council, or were they?
Well, he asked for ideas, so I was just going to throw one.
Can we just hold that thought for a second? And was your question to the Leader of the Council?
Yeah, I just want to go back to where I started in the beginning. Is we have a 49,000 cleaning bill. Now I spent a couple of years getting a license for real estate, and you need to put your house in order before you sell it. The building is a disgrace. So if you want to sell it, you've got to make it saleable at the moment, and that is possibly partly simply cleaning it. Right now, on the 3rd floor, there's tiles coming up off the floor. There's grass everywhere. There's water peeling. There's water dampness in the building. Why haven't we cleaned it up? If we're thinking of moving and disposing of it, we can't dispose of it the way it looks. I wouldn't even look at it as whether I had 10 million in the bank or not. It's just not feasible to buy that building the way it looks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis, and then I want to go to Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, it's a direct back on that. Is actually people were absolutely gobsmacked when the valuation came forward. The valuation takes into account the condition. So actually, when you're saying that it's £375,000, well, if we look at just the building itself, that is taking into account the millions of pounds it will cost to bring it into repair. So actually, the amount that you're selling it for is into the millions, but the valuation is taken into account, sold as is. People, I know a number of people were shocked and some people laughed in the room. I mean, not to be rude, they just were really surprised and thought it was undervalued. You've seen the building, you've seen what it looks like. What were you expecting? A much higher amount for that? It's impossible. It's impossible. We know what it looks like. That's the valuation done by experts, and that's the figure that they've come up with. So that's what it takes into consideration. The other query was just around the Public Works Loan Board. This is just me. This might just be me from an increments perspective. But the City Council not able to do Public Works Loan Board.
I think so.
Thought they were.
Well, get clarification on that. Can somebody get some clarification on that specific point? That would help.
Chair, the Ross Town Council has a public loan.
Well, there you go.
For its own offices.
Thank you, Councillor Stark.
Council.
Thank you, Councillor Stark. There's our answer to that question. Councillor Harvey, please, if you wish to come in at this stage.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to try and pick up on a number of points that have been made in the debate so far. I absolutely agree that it's important that we don't look at the town hall in isolation, and we're not. There's already been a decision that councillors have voted on in full council to dispose of number 8 and number 10 and the building to the right of the Shire Hall as you look at it, which is used by Children's Services at some point in the future. Those are decisions that have already come before you all as councillors. We have commissioned work to be done to try and understand the liability that we're facing with the condition of the Shire Hall. But together, this is just another mess that we've inherited. I think, if members of the committee actually look at the supplementary document that shows what the spending has been on this building over the last sort of 4 or 5 years, you will see a massive dip in the amount spent in 2017 and 2018, which is coincident with the overspend, the £1 million overspend on Blue School House. Because, there was an accommodation strategy that involved a number of different buildings and a number of different moves of services. And the £1 million overspend on Blue School will have taken funding away from other projects within that overall package. Now, maybe officers can tell us the degree to which that impacted on the maintenance budget for the town and the Shire Hall, which we can't see here, the Shire Hall figures. But the figures that you've been presented with, which I'm sure you've all looked at in some detail, show that in 2016, £366,000 was spent on maintenance on the building. In 2017, it was only £13,000. And in 2018, it was minus £129, it looks like. We've spent 135k on it in 2019 and 108k in 2020. But we're chasing our tail in terms of the condition of the building, which has been allowed to decay over tens of years in other people's hands, in your hands, if you're an opposition, if you're in the Conservative group, So we're now having to grip this and we're looking at the options. Asking whether, members of the public are, up in arms about this or not. Well, nobody's put any questions to this meeting. Even councillors representing concerned members of their wards have not put questions into this meeting. Are we shouting into a bucket here? Or are people actually concerned about it? Because when we have asked in budget consultations for people to express their priorities in terms of the council's spending, down the bottom of the list has been the council spending on buildings and property. We have that data, we have done that consultation. And we can ask the question again, if you want us to, in the consultation, which is in the process of kicking off now, if we're not asking it already. But it's very clear that members of the public do not prioritise the council spending money on buildings when we have pressures elsewhere in services that affect people's lives on a day-to-day basis. Let's not forget, colleagues, we have £11.5 million worth of savings to deliver in this financial year. The reason that we're proposing this disposal, either to you know, a safe pair of hands, be it a community interest company or the city council or a third party who's going to be a responsible owner of the town hall, is because we cannot be a responsible owner of that building when we have a huge liability associated with the ceilings that have fallen in and the terrible damage that has been caused by a lack of maintenance over many years by the Conservatives in the Shire Hall. You know, we could be looking at 7, 10, more than that, £1 million worth of repair liability for that building. And that building is a lot less attractive for somebody else to buy and to live in and to work in and deliver services out of than the town hall. We are, you know, between a rock and a hard place. And I really would encourage committee members to put your business hats on. Be grown up and realistic, as we have to be, looking at what the options are for us. You know, Councillor Roan talks about, you know, historically the Conservatives looking down the barrel of a gun and having to make difficult decisions. Well, my goodness, you know, we've got a whole, you know, battlefield full of guns pointed at us at the moment that we're having to make tough decisions over, and we're doing it. And this is one of them. Now, you know, I'm happy to be, you know, corrected, but to my understanding, the City Council is the only large urban council in Herefordshire which does not own its own home, its own building. When you look at the precepts that the other large parish councils, the market towns, charge, they include the running costs, the maintenance, the responsibility for putting reserves aside for upkeep of their historical buildings. They take responsibility for that. Now, discussions have been going on for many years with the City Council. The City Council councillors I know for a long time have had, you know, an aspiration to own their home, you know, and I'm sympathetic to it. I really am. You know, we all would like to make it happen. And as Councillor Davis has said, you know, even though we're looking at potentially an independently valued capital receipt of up to 365,000 for number 8 and for the car park and the town hall, we would forego that to transfer those buildings into responsible hands who will take on the liability as well as the asset of those buildings in order to keep it in public hands. But I think, you know, if this committee is going to say, you know, as a recommendation, this is a public building now and can only ever be a public building, you fetter us in terms of the kind of owner that we could expect to step forward to take responsibility for this building, you know, and you limit the kind of organisations and individuals that we could sell to, you know, and you know, it's not helpful to talk the building down. You know, we're being realistic and honest about its condition, but to say that the only organisation that would be interested in it is Wetherspoons is in fact to run in opposition to a recommendation that it remains in public hands and public ownership. So whatever it is that happens to this building, we need to recognise that it has to go into safe and responsible hands. An individual or an organisation that will accept the responsibility for owning a listed building, an important civic building in the centre of our city. And this county council has not been that responsible organisation. And if we are going to be that responsible organisation as far as the Shire Hall is concerned, we're actually maintaining the sticky end of the punt pole. We're taking the big risk. We're accepting the huge liability, the more difficult of the two buildings. You know, and that is a decision which is yet to come.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Harvey, for your comments, and I'm sure the scrutiny committee has listened to all of the points that you've made. It was interesting to note, though, that the expenditure on the stonework that's ended up being nearly £250,000 was commenced in November 2018, which was obviously a period when the coalition was not responsible for the building, and it was under the stewardship of the Conservatives. But I had a few hands going up. I understand, Councillor Wilding, you've got your idea about use for the building. Did you want to raise that?
Yeah, I could do that now, yeah.
Now, and then Councillor Bowes, and then once we've had those 2 points, I would really like to go to the Mayor and Councillor Andrews, because they've been very patient.
Thanks, Chair. Very quickly, leading up to my idea, should it be sold on the open market? I don't want to see that. Should it be used for the benefit of the public? Yes, I'd like to see that. Given the financial pressures that Councillor Harvey has so well laid out in front of us, I can see the problems. She also mentioned shouting into a bucket, and you know, we had this meeting in this room to allow the public to come in. I don't see any public here at all. There's loads of empty chairs. No, I'd like to know from government services how many people are looking online. Maybe they can tell us afterwards. That might be interesting. But no one from the public has turned up to see this meeting, and which is why we're here. I'd have liked not to have turned up because given the climate and ecological emergency, I'm glad I've got that one in, I would have liked to have attended this meeting online. But supposedly I have to vote, so I've had to drive 20 miles to come here to see no one from the public turned up. Actually, I'm happy they haven't, because they haven't driven here. All right, so that's all that. I appreciate Councillor Stevens and the council want to keep control, and I know they have a lease for 15 years anyway. So how could we sell it at the moment with them in there as well? Right, so coming to my idea, I want to give it to Banksy. Let's give it to Banksy and tell him to make it into a huge artwork. He could install huge glass tunnels and the public could walk through it and see the failed grandeur of an old building and what happens to an old building when there is no money, because there is no money. We are not given any money by central government, so we can't spend money on it. So, and as Councillor Harvey and other people have said, would the public want us to spend their money rather than feeding people in nursing homes? The answer they gave was no. So let's give it to Banksy or Damien Hirst or even Rachel Whitehead. She can fill it with concrete. Whatever happens. The thing about Banksy, though, is when they had an exhibition in Bristol, there were queues round the streets, people wanting to see what Banksy had done in a building. And you could be charging them £10 a head to come in and see it. So give it to Banksy.
We don't have his email address.
Okay, I just thank you, Councillor Wilding. I can just see all of the listed buildings officers scratching their heads, but we take on board your suggestion. Councillor Bowes, and then we'll go to the Mayor if we may.
Looking forward to this.
I'm not doing any artwork. Thank you, Chair. I completely understand that the City Council want that building as their own, and they have great ideas for it, which I fully support. But I think we also have to look at a recommendation to get the City Council to step up as well. They have to consult their residents. They're looking, somebody mentioned earlier about the Public Works Board. Why are they not putting forward these ideas? From 2000, we've had that property, is my understanding. We've had that from 2000. Why has it not been transferred back to them before now? What has stopped that happening? Because we're in this situation now where we are stuck between a rock and a hard post. That building should have transferred back to them. Those city councillors at the time and those county councillors on the city council should have pushed and pushed to make sure that's happened. And we are now here where we are now. There's no point shaking your head. We are where we are. Why did nobody not complain about it in 21 years ago? But nothing's happened. The city council, in my view, has to take some ownership, and we have to look at ways we can support them to look at setting up the CIC or to look at getting these grants. They can get grants for things, we can't. We need it to go to someone who loves that building, who takes care of that building, and has the knowledge and the skills and wants to make something of it. Our residents have already been consulted once and said they don't want it. That is the least of, and as Councillor Stark has said, other city council, other parish councils have budgets responsible for their upkeep of their historic buildings. We have to start asking the city council to step up on that. And finally, just for now, Councillor Bowen, you said about selling the family silver once the assets have gone. We already did that with the farms, so we're already on that track.
I got it. Well, things against the committee's will as well, if I may say, unless their recommendation is not to sell them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bowes. You mentioned the City Council, so I think it's an appropriate time to, if we could ask the Mayor.
Councillor Andrews would like to go first because she's one of those councillors that Councillor Bowes just spoke about.
Okay then, well, with your permission, Mr Mayor, then we will go straight to
well, thank you.
Councillor Andrews.
I'm using this microphone. Is it actually working?
Yes, yes,
thank you. I'm going to give you a little history lesson, sorry. As Councillor Bowes has already said, the land for the town hall was given by two sisters in memory of their father. And the original building, started in 1902, was estimated to cost 18,000. When it was completed in 1904, the actual cost was 31,000. So one has to say that cost overruns are nothing new. Because of its elaborate design, it has always been an expensive building to maintain. And of course, it's a grade 2 star listed building, which makes maintenance even more expensive. Now, this is the bit I think that Councillor Bowes is commenting on. When the City Council ceased to exist, we were then given advice that we could not be parish, which would then enabled us to keep control of the town hall. This advice was subsequently proved to be entirely incorrect, and we were eventually parished. By then it was too late. The town hall had gone into the ownership of the county council. Now, much has been made over the years of the lack of maintenance, and I would have to say that I don't think any administration, be it the then coalition, Conservative or current administration, comes out of it well. I really don't. I think that the Mayor will tell you the efforts that have been made to seek funding. Now, I can tell you that the City Council did offer, way back, it must be at least 15 years ago now, remember I've been in council for 25 years, that we did offer them to buy it. But our offer was refused. So there you go. We did offer, we had grand plans for the use of it, and we had offers for charities who would like to rent space in it. It's still well used for weddings. My own elder son actually got married in the council chamber. And it's well used and it's very valuable. I'm sorry that members of the public could not hear Councillor Wilding. I don't think many of them even realise this meeting was taking place. But I will pass on to the Mayor, who can tell you the efforts that are being made currently.
Firstly, thank you, Chair and Committee, for inviting me along to speak today. People that know me know I'm very straight talking. There's a few smoke and mirrors going on here today, and certainly in front of the documents that you've got in front of you as well, I've got to say. Firstly, for the benefit of officers, it's a city council. Hereford has been a city since 1189 and is the second oldest city by charter. I would welcome Sarah and Neil to come to the town hall. It's obvious that they're not very aware of the building themselves, and I'll invite them into the parlour and they can have a tour of the building so that they can understand some of the history of the building, which is important because without history, what are we? The town hall fell into the ownership of the new unitary authority in 1998, as Councillor Andrews had mentioned. It could have been transferred back to the City Council in 2000 along with the allotments when the council became parish. For the last 13 years, the City Council, probably 15 years, I got my dates slightly wrong, have been in negotiations with the County Council to asset transfer the property. I have been involved in those discussions for at least the last 5 years. As part of our discussions, the County Council had a survey done in 2019. We had a survey done in 2018, which we offered for the County Council to look at. That cost us £9,000. I presume it was probably cost the same. So there's £18,000 in surveys straight away. Anyway, as part of our discussions, we asked the conservation officer if all the repairs and everything that had gone on at the town hall complied with listed status. He stated no. So we asked, would Herefordshire indemnify us against the risk of having to do works to be, in lieu of those liabilities, what the status would be? No answer was received. So that's quite damning, isn't it? That a building that's been looked after since 1998 obviously has not been looked after correctly. So much so that your own conservation officer wouldn't sign that off. So that's a worry to the City Council in wanting to take on the building. Also, I noticed from your Town Hall Data General Scrutiny Committee sheet with the orange heading, the survey identified a total of 1.8 million for maintenance or repairs. That's not quite correct because the overall liability is about 6 million when you take in the mechanicals, the lifts, the rewire, the heating, etc. So the liability in total is 6 million. So that's where you can see that we fall down as a city council in wanting to take the building on our own. Hence why Encore were offered by Councillor Davis to come and join us. And once they looked at those figures, it would unfortunately take Encore and the music hall and that organisation just too much of a liability. So that's the real issue. It's been a real battle as a tenant to get our landlord to do basic repairs. And that has been going on as long as I've been a councillor, which is over 6 years. And those discussions, as Councillor Davis knows, are constantly ongoing, trying to get the basics repaired. Councillor Wilding mentions it. We've got a 15-year lease. We've got no intention of going anywhere. I've told the leader that. I've told Paul Walker that. We've got a 15-year lease, we are staying. Some of the ideas we've got for the building surround arts and culture. Obviously in Friar Street, we've got some fantastic artwork that's in storage belonging to the County Council. We wanted to take on the hat collection and that can be shown in the building. Also, a previous resident of my colleague over there, Councillor Rowe, probably know the Carols, the Simon Carroll from Red Hill. Yeah. So Simon was the same age as me, sadly passed away about 10 years ago from liver cancer and was a fantastic ceramicist. His collection is currently stored in the V&A. I've wrote to the V&A and asked if it could come back to Hereford. They are more than happy for that to happen. So we've got plans, but we just need a bit of help. We cannot take the building on our own. It's too much of a liability. We are back at Fag Packet Finance to look at, how could we raise £6 million? Well, we'd have to put our council tax up by 50%. Couldn't do that, could we, realistically? So, yes, we do need to look at other avenues. Councillor Davis and her team have been very helpful. We're having regular discussions and looking at a CIC, a CIO, etc. We're talking to rural media and HBOS to see which is the best way forward on that. The problem we've got at the moment is CIOs have taken an awful long time to set up for some reason. I think it's probably COVID related. So, time is against us there. So we are very, very keen to take on the building, but it would be helpful if those immediate repairs were ongoing to stop the ongoing damage that's being caused by dry rot and water ingress, etc., etc. As I mentioned, the building has belonged to the Unitary Authority since 1998. As Councillor Andrews said, there's been many colours of political parties since then. And you've got these explanatory notes about ongoing maintenance that you've received in your packs. Now, to me, some of it is not maintenance. Marriage room heaters, a camera survey, Wi-Fi networks installed, that's not maintenance. That's providing, what you need in the building. The basic maintenance has not been carried out. I've been in that building for 6 years, well, many more years than that, because my father used to work for the old city council when it was the, way back before 2000. He was the town crier, and my ex-wife started her working life in that building also. So I've known that building a very, very long time. So while I've been a councillor, the basic maintenance stuff that you probably do on your own home, such as clearing gutters, painting window frames and stuff like that, none of that work has gone on. And I just find it bizarre that basic maintenance is not carried out. For whatever reason, I just think, your property strategy is not for me to say, but, you really do need to look after buildings and do the basics, which I feel have not been done. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody would like to ask of me. Councillor, the chair said that would be possible. So I'll leave it there. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Rose, do you have a question for Councillor Stevens?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support the city wanting to take over the building, and I think everybody here would be very supportive of that. I couldn't go with Councillor Bowen's recommendation that it should be in public ownership, because your comments today have shown us that actually we are not the right people to look after that building. We have let down our tenants, we have let down the people of Herefordshire with letting that building go to rapid ruin, for want of a better word. When I went on a tour, I was astounded by the state of the building. And I think your comments and those of Councillor Andrews have actually shown us we aren't fit landlords to own listed buildings. We need to support you and any other groups to set up a CIC so that that building is transferred for the use of the public of Herefordshire. My worry is still, how are we going to afford to pay the 1.8 million plus probably double money to get it up to standard before you take it over or before another community group takes it over? That's my concern. But I think I'm fully supportive of the fact that you want the building and for the public to use it and look at different ways of people getting involved in it. But my query is still, how are we going to pay for the money to get it back to a standard? And maybe that public works board loan is something that you could investigate or we could investigate and see how we can move forward. But I think that's just, your comments to me have just shown that we aren't the right people. We don't have the money, we don't have the expertise in the council to do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stark?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Thanks for that, Mayor. The one issue I have, which has been raised at this meeting, is my residents do pay for the town chambers, do pay for the upkeep of the market hall, and do have a property portfolio, part of which, Councillor Davis, was transferred from you. And when you look at the precept for Hereford against the precept for the market towns, they are not on the same basis. The precepts for the market towns do include this property expenditure. So whatever we decide today, Mayor, I do think that the City Council would have to contribute at least something through a precept rise for me to be able to say to my residents that that was a fair outcome. Because at the end of the day, they could say they're paying twice. Once for the property portfolio that we have to pay for through the town council precept, and one for the property portfolio for this town hall that the county council owns at the moment. So whatever the solution is, and to be frank, Chair, I don't have one. I do think that the city council will have to contribute to that through some precept loans.
Okay, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To start with, I don't think this meeting was probably very well publicised, if at all, which is very unfortunate. And that's why we have, as you can see, a lot of very empty chairs.
It was in the Hereford Times and all over Facebook and
Was
social
it?
media.
Yes. Well, I've talked to a number of people, they couldn't find it. And I'm sorry about that. And you must think of other ways and try and make sure people do get here, or can get here, and realize it's on. It's just very unfortunate. I would be interested to know how many were watching on television.
Six.
Six.
Including two people that are members. At least.
I see, yes, well, that's not
Okay.
impressive either, is it? Jane? Well, very unfortunate. To say that there are many other forms of public ownership besides perhaps just the council. So there can be discussion about that too, I think. And I think the public would like to see it remain in some form of public ownership. And just because the council has failed so far, doesn't mean to say it couldn't learn by its mistakes and do far better in the future. Just another point of consideration. It's about time it did get back together and do things properly in this particular way. And it will be possibly a very interesting way forward if we had the courage to do it. We do have reserves, and I believe we've got quite a lot of reserves too. And perhaps we can be informed of those. And sometimes you've got to do brave things, like take money out of reserves, bring your buildings up to standard, make sure they are fit for purpose in the future, and then you can hand them on to perhaps the town council, perhaps with its partners, to actually make sure that it does carry on being a very valuable, much loved public asset. I do think that is important. It's not just business. We have a public duty as well, I think. Everything's being not dumbed down, but reduced, shall we say, to a business proposition. Government is more than just a business proposition. We are here for the good of the people of Herefordshire and the city of Hereford, in this case in particular. And we must think on those lines, I think, so that we have to decide where and how much we can and should afford to keep our buildings in proper maintenance and being properly used for the benefit of the public. And I think that is very important. I don't think Wetherspoons is just for the benefit of only a small portion. I think we've got to have it for everybody. And as it is at the moment, the registrars, city council, and so on, and all its treasurers as well, are there right at the heart of the city, and they should remain so, I think.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillor Davis has got a hand up. Would you like to come back and then we'll go to Councillor Bowes?
Yeah, okay, thank you. It's come up a few times, so I need to raise it about staff and where they're going, and the fact that our staff staying in the property is a really important thing, that we don't discuss things around staff until staff have been consulted, but we will all be aware of better ways of working, and coming in now is something called flexible futures. And what we need to understand is that people work in a different way now. So historically, people would go into offices to do work. COVID, for all of the negative that it did, it also created positive. And for example, for anybody who says everybody doesn't want to work at home, study for the NHS staff showed that 86% of disabled people that were able to work from home were able to manage their disability better. So it's not just about reducing our asset base, it's about working leaner, working better, which is exactly what the budget consultation looked at. And that's what, when I spoke to people, that's what they were saying is, well, why can't you work just from one building instead of you all working from different buildings? So that needs to be really understood, and also things such as Equality Act obligations. So if it's going to remain in public use, we have to make it fully Equality Act compliant, not just section off parts of that town hall. So I think it's really important to say that wherever staff would go would be part of the overarching flexible futures strategy. So this is why the full asset review is happening at this moment, to identify those buildings that we should maintain under council control, and others that either they get transferred to a community organisation, a town council, a city council, or whether or not they go out onto the open market. And that is the right thing to do. And it's the right thing to do that should have been done 20 years ago when we had all of those properties. But it doesn't matter. I'm not here to score political points. I don't care how we've got to the point where we are. This is the right thing to do right now, to make these really difficult but essential decisions on buildings. From what I've heard, we have an interesting group that would like to take that asset on. We're working with them to enable that to happen. So that's really, really important. What I will sit there and say again and again, and I think Councillor Stark has absolutely nailed it. Why on earth would we say to the residents of Rossall and Wye, who are already paying for their own town hall, we're going to take that money out of reserves, or we're going to, because if we're going to maintain it and keep hold of it, it's going to cost us revenue every single year. Why am I saying to residents of Rossall and Wye and Ledbury that actually Hereford City is more important than you? It doesn't feel fair, and I would hope that nobody would disagree with that. I absolutely get Councillor Bowen's point about public buildings and about history. I do, and I got married in the town hall. I had the scaffolding, by the way, so that was lovely. So I know about the town hall. I worked in the town hall. It has absolute value for everybody, but I just genuinely do not believe we are that safe pair of hands for it. And I also don't think we are when you consider literally a 1 minute walk, we have the Shire Hall, and what we would be saying is we're going to spend the money on both of them. Where that is insane. That's tens of £millions when we can't even afford to maintain our roads, or we can't even think about getting children safeguarding up to the standard where it needs to be. Those are the real decisions that we have to make as councillors, and we do have to think differently and say, what is the best use of our money? And for me, the right thing to do is the community asset transfer process. But if that falls down, we must have a backup. And that's what this decision was all about, saying, if this doesn't work, what do we do then? Because it's been identified as a saving within our budget. A saving, not a profit, a saving. It's all to do with those ongoing revenue costs. And I think that's what we need to just come back to. This isn't about paying out a little bit of money and it being okay. This is about ongoing maintenance costs that we know we cannot afford. 20 years of abuse of that building shows you that.
Councillor Davis, can I come back on that? There's a couple of issues that I think have arisen from the conversation. There seems to be a disagreement between the council and the city council about how much money is required to fix the building. That, I think, is something that concerns me from where I'm sitting. So that's an issue that I think I would like to see bottomed out as a result of this, to know what we're talking about, to know the liabilities. And I think Councillor Stevens makes a really interesting point about cost of Wi-Fi and things like that. That's a separate issue entirely from replacing legwork or whatever. So there's that issue to bottom out. The problems that exist with the building are problems that you pretty much expect of a building that old, that big, being listed. And I'm sure there are buildings throughout the kingdom where there are similar problems, and probably larger buildings with very similar problems. So the council, because they're the owner of the building, have that responsibility to fix the problem. But obviously there's sense in making the view that the long-term future of the building is probably best in the hands of the people who really, really want it. And City Council. So it seems to me that a way forward, if we're to try and keep the building as a public building, is to transition in a way that's not, well, we either hand you the keys and you accept it all and that's the end of the matter and see you, or if you can't do that, we'll just give it to somebody else who can pay the going rate for it. And I'm wondering if a community interest company is set up with the support of the council financially to help it on its way to address some of the key issues financially. And in that period of transition and handover, does a community interest company then, are they in a better position to apply for funding, like lottery funding, things like that? And so rather than have this, well, it's all got to be handing over the keys, good luck, see you, you've got the problem, goodbye, we haven't got the problem anymore. Is there a way forward that's a transition that allows the new company to get funding, but has the security of the council honouring its obligations financially to fix problems that have needed to be fixed for a long time, some of which have been done, but not all. So I'm thinking, is that a way forward to pursue, rather than this, we've got to have a cut-off date to make a final decision, hand it over, and then, sink or swim. And the point of pursuing it in that way, the benefits of that would be that, well, the lease is there anyway for 15 years, so the City Council aren't going anywhere. And that's an issue. And the issue is there are outstanding maintenance problems and issues to address the building anyway that have got to be done in a way that is acceptable to the local planning authority, which is council itself. So I'm just wondering if, rather than have a handover proposal, there's a transition proposal where the council takes its responsibilities for financial issues, but looking to a longer term aim where community interest company, supported by Precept, is able to get that extra funding that a council wouldn't necessarily be able to get to address the longer term bigger issues.
I would go to officers for that. One of the things that has been discussed is whether or not you could do a lease during that period. For me, the critical part is that this has gone on for 20 odd years. The truth is, we all know it should have been given back to the city immediately. Everybody knows that in this room. And it didn't happen for whatever reasons. Poor advice, and political will, whatever it is, it's happened. So now, for me, a decision has to be made, because the easiest decision for me is to kick it into the long grass. It's the easiest thing for me to do, and wait in a couple of years' time when either us or a different administration has to take on that problem. For me, that's not the right thing to do for Herefordshire. I think any agreement would have to be written down and kept to, which I don't think it has previously. And it also has to have caveats on teams and staff, etc. But Sarah, is it all right if I pass over to you to answer that question? Is that okay? The loaded question. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Well, it's quite a complex area, but to try and give a very brief view of it, the normal community asset transfer process would be that if the council is happy for a building to transfer to community ownership, then it's for the community organisation to make a proposal to actually come forward with a business case. Now, that's not a financial or a process-driven obligation by the council. It's a moral obligation to make sure that whoever's taking over an asset actually has the means to run it, that they're not going to get themselves into any financial or legal issues or obligations, and to understand that they've really thought about the process and what they want to do. Normally, when I've done this before, we would offer anywhere any lease appropriate to the building and the transfer. So some new organisations don't want something that's very long, but normally it would be about 25 years plus. And what funding organisations normally want is a long-term lease, so that they know that if people go for funding, that the money isn't going to be wasted because the building will be shut up within a couple of years. So a long-term lease is normally, or a freehold transfer is what we would consider. Yes, the City Council, apologies, have a lease at the moment, and clearly what we do is that lease would become terminated, and our colleague Guy from Legal will give you the proper wording if you want, upon the freehold transfer of the building, which is a legal process. The timescale is normally determined and agreed between both parties. So depending on the size and scale of the transfer, you'd come up with something that was sensible. So normally 3 months is a starting offer for the development of a business case. And if the group are progressing, but they have issues, they want to talk to planners, they want to get some legal aspects, they want to look at funding opportunities, then clearly that can be extended by negotiation. And then once the business case is submitted and the council can assure itself that there is a clear plan of action and that the group understands what they're taking on, they have everything in place, then you would start a legal process of transferring the building. So from that perspective, that's normally how a community asset transfer would work. Does that help? And sorry, were there any follow-up queries on that? Because it was quite a complex and long question, sorry.
I'll make the question more simple and short then. Could there be a phased transition with regard to handing over the property, in the sense that a community interest company set up, that can then crack on and try to get grant funding, but then the council don't leave them in a position where they're not going to honour any other financial obligations in terms of helping to restore the building? Because as I understand it, you have the building, warts and all, and you've got it, and so good luck. That's the council washing its hands of the responsibility. And of course, the City Council with its finances is not in a position to just do that carte blanche. So is there setting up of that process, and then the council not withdrawing the drawbridge, as it were, but helping out with some of the financial costs to get it going, with the understanding that that company will then also be getting funding itself, either through the precept or through lottery grants or something like that, to meet that some of that cost of restoration? That is the point.
Okay, thank you for the clarity, Chair. Just to say on that, there's no right or wrong answer, and it does depend on the situation. Yes, the council is able to offer some form of either letter of comfort. There are various to a funder to say, this is the situation. The council is fully supportive of a community asset transfer and of the City Council or CIC's bid for funding. So we can offer letters of comfort and legal sort of letters up front, so that the City Council, the CIC, whoever, can go ahead and seek funding and put applications in. We can also offer various types of leases and agreements to lease the building before a freehold transfer. So, it depends on the offer that comes back from the organisation that's set up to take over the building. So I'm trying to give you a generalistic view, but the actual detail would depend on what actually happens and what the offer is. The other thing, of course, with regards the financial aspect of the council helping out, if I've understood right, of course, that would have to be subject to any capital bid, and clearly that would need to go through proper processes in order to fund expenditure. And I think the whole point of the discussion today has been that the council is not comfortable with expending a lot of money based upon the condition survey. The council also has a legal duty to achieve best value. So in any reports and decisions that go forward, we need to be very clear on a freehold community asset transfer. If the monetary value is not being exchanged, what value we're giving up, so that it can be recorded and that the social value aspect can be emphasised in its place. The condition survey, I've done a little bit of a one page just to review the condition survey reports. There were 3 reports that the City Council that I have access to produced, which was a survey, an M&E and a cost statement. And then the council also did another one, which broadly agreed with the M&E side. And looking at the year 1 and then the year 1 to 5, which is where the 1.8 came from, and that includes VAT. So it's about 1.5 million on a year 1 to 5, and then the deferred cost and the cyclical costs. I make it just under 2.2 million. So, but the actual costs that anybody would incur depend on an awful lot of things. It depends how you package up items. It depends how you procure items. It depends on available budget. At the moment, we know building costs are rising exponentially because of the results of COVID and probably the evergreen ship in the Panama Canal, was it, or the Suez? So there are lots of reasons and lots of impacts that affect actual costs when you get there. This is just an indicative cost. We'll have to have a conversation with the mayor to understand where the 6 million came from, because I can't see that figure, sorry, in the condition surveys. But hopefully that gives you a broader picture. It's really difficult to give you a definitive answer because it depends what the offer is that actually comes back.
But there will be a objective figure about restoration costs. Put running costs to one side for a second. There must be an objective cost for restoration.
It's not restoration, sorry, Chair.
No.
The condition survey is quite a standardised format, and if you look at it, the mechanical and electrical plants, so all the boilers, the fire alarm, the intruder alarms, is just on a replacement basis. So it doesn't matter whether the boiler is at life end or the lift is at life end. All the condition survey says is to replace this item, it will cost you X pounds. The condition survey will pick up everything, including nicks in walls that need, a bit of filler in. It will say that the door handles have seen better days, so they need replacement. That the lighting could do with doing in 2 years' time. So it's not a refurbishment cost. It's a replacement cost for like. So and of course it all depends for the plans for the future of the building as well. So depending on how you want to use the building, that has a huge impact on your actual cost going forward. Sorry, Neil, did you want to come in?
No, I was just going to say exactly that. There is no definitive figure until you've got a definitive brief. What we're talking about here is a backlog of maintenance, and as you said, replacing like for like. This is not a restoration cost, and neither is it going to turn the space into grade A office accommodation like you would expect to have in a modern building. It is just replacing it the way it was. If you want to refurbish it, then you'll probably be talking a lot more than 6 million.
Okay. Right. A couple of committee members want to ask questions, but Councillor Stevens wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes. Okay. The City Council are at a good starting point because we've had our own survey done, which broadly agrees, as Sarah said, to your own survey. Encore have also given us their business plan, which we'd like to follow, very similarly as the town hall being some sort of arts hub. Obviously, their idea was music. Ours is more ceramics, art, paintings, etc. possibility. The reason the Encore pulled out with their partnership with the City Council was those immediate wants of repair, and then those further costs of repair in the future. So rather than them carrying on with their day-to-day business of raising money through the music pool and Encore and providing the music facilities for the county, they just felt they'd be ongoing trying to raise money to repair the building. So that's why that fell away. We're all in politics, and we all know all the chairs move around every 4 years, which in the business world isn't helpful, because obviously most people want a 5-year business plan, and on bigger buildings, etc. You really want a 20-year to a 30-year business plan. As I said, the chairs move around. So before the chairs moved around 2 years ago, when the City Council were in discussions with the previous authority, and I was certainly in a meeting with Jeff Hughes and Helen Beale, etc., where a sinking fund was spoke about for those very matters like the heating system and things like that. Obviously, that fell away, those discussions, because once again, it's that time of in the 4-year cycle where we all move the chairs again, and the new authority need to get up to speed, and you're starting again almost, because there doesn't seem to be a plan that is put in place that will be acceptable to whatever colours coming in next. So I do think, because we're only 2 years away from the next set of elections, whatever's decided by this committee needs to be agreed in a long-term plan amongst the officers of Herefordshire Council, that this is the way forward, this is the way we want to go, and we all stick by it so we know where we're going. So yes, the City Council do want to take on that building. It's not our fault, it's not our building, it's just the way things happened in 1998, and Ross got theirs back, and various buildings, and Leicester got theirs back, but for whatever reason, obviously Herefordshire have used that building for coroners, registrars, elections, licensing. So the unitary authority have obviously used that building, so that's probably why it's taken such long to try and come back. So it is a difficult situation to resolve, but I hope that just put a bit more meat on the bone for you.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Stark, then Councillor Bowen.
Well, I've been listening to the debate, and I have come to a sort of conclusion that I would support, which is that I do agree that the city of Hereford should be put in the same position as the market towns in terms of owning its own town hall, and it should really be left to them as to how they would then utilise that in terms of their own functions and in terms of income streams. But come back to the point that our precept in Ross went up about 85% over a number of years, partly down to the property transfers that we took on from Herefordshire Council. My problem with that proposal in itself, that it should just go back to the City Council without any financial impact on the residents of Hereford, is one that sticks in my throat. Because Hereford's residents are not paying for that town hall. My residents are not paying for that town hall directly, but they are paying for it indirectly. They're paying for it through their county council precept. So I could go along with a transfer to the city, but I do think the city needs to stand up, look at the precept it charges its own residents, and be prepared to raise it sufficiently to try and help towards an agreed transfer. Because at the moment, they are not taking on any financial burden at all, unlike the market towns. Now, I said that Councillor Andrews has said there was that opportunity to do it, but it didn't happen. So to correct that, I think there has to be some recognition by the city that to take on this asset, they will have to, at least, whatever the agreement might be between the county and the city, for that financial burden to be at least shared by them in terms of a precept rise. Otherwise, my residents won't buy into this.
Yeah, absolutely. But to be fair to Hereford residents, they're paying a precept, but they're also paying their council tax as well, which is going to the maintenance of the town hall. I know you're saying
Hereford residents are not paying for the upkeep of Ross.
No, I accept it, but they are contributing.
So if you're looking at transitional arrangement that you were talking about, Chair,
yeah,
I do think Hereford have to recognise that some of that financial burden. I agree it may not be down to you, Councillor Stephen, that you should be facing that, because it wasn't your decisions that led to the bad maintenance of buildings. But we are where we are.
Yeah.
As a Ross councillor, I do feel I could agree with the transfer to the city, but I would want that financial burden to be shared in some way.
Yeah,
And I would want the committee to recognise that today.
which was
That
my
the decision to.
which was my point, I think, about sharing the responsibility of the transfer to ensure
But
that
it has to be the financial burden as well. It can't
yes,
just be-
yeah.
can't just be accepted that the county should pay for all that, despite the fact that they may be responsible for it.
Yeah, and the same is of course true in places like Bromyard, where their ratepayers are paying for their building.
Yeah.
Because they have to purchase it from Herefordshire Council as well.
But in principle, I'm not against the asset transfer to the city, because I think that would keep it in public use, and it would be beneficial to the residents of Hereford for that to happen as well. So I'm not against that. I just think we need to recognise that financial burden needs to be shared.
Which I think the point I was making as well. Right, Councillor Bowes and then Councillor Summers.
Thank you, Chair. I would happily go along with that proposal. And I think, as well as looking at the increasing their precept, the City Council could at that stage look at what grants and funding availability that they could get to ease the burden on their taxpayer.
Yeah.
So I definitely go along.
Yeah, which is the point I was making about having that ability to go for that funding in a way that this council could not. Councillor Summers and then Councillor Bowen.
Well, number one, I'm kind of disappointed in.
Sorry, continue.
I'm quite disappointed in the empty seats, and I'm quite disappointed in the amount of people that are watching, because I was hoping this would catch the public attention, which it hasn't done. I agree with both your transitions, and I agree with Councillor Bowes go to the public, and I think that's something where we need to look at again. There's such thing as crowdfunding nowadays. So let's put your money where your mouth is, for example. So I think we need to go to the public and say, okay, you want town hall, you're gonna have to pay for it. How you do that is up to you. And I think that's probably a direction we need to be going in, to see if the public really want the town hall, because the people that were complaining in the Hereford Times don't seem to be interested now. They've had their say and they've fallen away. So we need that public reaction, and we're not getting it. And it is their decision at the end of the day. It's their. So I think we need to be looking at transition, as you said, that we build it up slowly, a little slower. I know it's been going on for years, but right now we have a new CEO, et cetera, so there are new things happening. Plus, the go to the public again. I know we've been to the public already, but it was only tentative against a bunch of other things. You have to ask them, do they want their town hall? We've asked them a whole bunch of stuff which they take in preference. So I think those things we need to look at. And of course, we do have crowdfunding. It would tell us where people want to go. Give them the chance. Anyway, that's just.
No, that's helping the discussion. Councillor Bowes and then, sorry, Councillor Davis, did you want to make a specific comment about that? Councillor Summers' point?
In fact, one of the main reasons for transferal into a CIC or a trust of sorts is that they can crowdfund. As a county council, we can't crowdfund. So that's one of the peak benefits really for it, because I think you've got Councillor Bowen saying about people who've come to him saying you must save the town hall. We've seen people on the social media saying it. Well, this is your opportunity to do that. So that I just want to confirm we can't do it as a council, but community interest groups could, so it weighs even more in favour of transferring.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just can we straighten out the legal position? The council has current obligations to discharge concerning the maintenance and repair of these iconic buildings. Does it intend to renege in that position, or can it just say, well, that's tough, we no longer interested in that as a starter? Just I think that should be cleared up. The other thing is, talking about staff that operate in the town hall at the moment, registrar staff have been working extremely hard, face to face, over the last, 18 months nearly, I think, sometimes working 12-hour days, 6 days a week. So I think we should consider them as a very important asset to our public place. And I would very much hope that the Registrar's Office and the allied spin-offs of them, like weddings, citizenship service, etc., could be allowed to stay in this amazing building, because it's is very much appreciated by those taking part in it. But I think you can't just take away registrar staff just like that and think they'll do anything there.
Councillor
I'll
Davis?
just come back on that, yeah.
Yep. And then Councillor Martin.
Well, as luck might have it, I'm now cabinet member for registrars. So I've got knowledge of what registrars have been doing, and especially during COVID, what they've been up to. But I will come back to the fact that registrars did exactly the same duties when they were based in Bath Street in an office. So at the moment we have big offices, and I think the mayor will be really honest with me here, is that they've got sites. If they were to take on that premises, that room that the registrars are in is massive. And actually they've got ideas for art galleries, etc. So I think what we've got to do is think a little bit differently and say, right, what do we need from a registrars? And if people want to book out rooms, it's absolutely right that becomes an income stream for the city council. So if they want it, the people who get married use that particular ceremony room and they pay for it. The same as you would be doing if you went to the Three Counties Hotel, for example. You'd be paying money for it. And I know that that's in the business case for Encore as well. So this isn't about saying we don't appreciate staff. And I have to stop my nostrils from flaring at that point, because I'm a trade unionist through and through, and no decisions will be made that don't think about staff. But I do think we need to get into the new world of what is required, i.e. Wi-Fi access, equality access, and making sure that we're not spending too much on our buildings just because they look regal. Actually, that's right, and that's a choice for people to make, but it's not right for our council taxpayers to pay for that privilege. It's for the people that want to go there. So there's no asking registrars to go and do things in thin air. They are front-facing individuals. So we would never be doing that. I don't know where that inference is coming from.
I can talk to you about that later on, outside this meeting. That might be useful too. But I'm sure the people getting married do pay a fee for the use of their room and the whole ceremony.
Not anything.
Well, you can I mean, if whoever's in charge of the place can always look at those things as part of a business plan. And I do think that we haven't made enough use of our facilities there, and we could do very much better and very much more profitably. Well, at least very much more rewardingly, for the benefit of both the City Council and the citizens of Hereford and Herefordshire. It's important, I think.
I don't disagree. I just don't think we're the right people to do it.
Well,
I believe that the City Council are.
The City Council might well be the right people to do it. And they are, I'm sure, full of enthusiasm for trying to do so. It doesn't mean to say the County Council can't learn lessons and do things better in the future. I think there's a very pessimistic and negative view. You've got to try and think, how can we work better as a county council?
Well, I'm exactly doing that by revising a property strategy that doesn't work.
Well, don't disagree with doing that, but don't say we can't do this, we can't do that. Perhaps you could do that, because we have experts in the way of our conservation officers and such, I'm sure, can be drawn in to help us decide what should and shouldn't be done and how it could be done. I would like the legal question answered as well.
I can't answer that.
Well, I think someone might be able to.
Right, so Mr. Goodman, we have a question about the legality of the responsibilities of the council with regards to the maintenance of the building.
Yep.
Is that the question you could have a go at answering for us, please?
It's difficult to answer without looking at the legal liabilities arising from the lease. So I don't know where the legal liabilities lie in respect to this particular building, so I can't comment at this stage.
But you could no doubt give advice about the fact that if a building is listed, there are certain responsibilities that the owner of a listed building has in order to make sure that the building isn't at risk as a heritage asset?
Yes, that would be the position as I understand it. It's not my area of expertise, but that's my understanding.
Okay.
I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, we should get that information because I think it's quite crucial to this debate as well.
I'm happy to take that away as a,
Yes, please.
as
Yes, please.
a written response back to the committee. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Okay.
That is very important.
Before we get back to the Mayor, Councillor Wilding.
Could I just finish off, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, yes,
I
sorry.
was going to say, the income that could be gained both from the town hall and also from the Shire Hall is quite reasonable, I think. I mean, the courts pay 50,000 a year for the use of the Shire Hall when the courts are usable. So get those at least one court, back into operation as soon as you can. That is a vital part of keeping justice in Herefordshire. I think that is a very important point. The Shire Hall is used on all sorts of occasions, both for music and performances, for meetings, and this, again, you're missing out all the way now for the next 2 years, possibly.
I used to play the trumpet there,
Good.
councillor, so I know all about the Shire Hall.
Okay.
Maybe you could make some income out of your office.
Right, okay, right. I'm conscious of the fact that we've gone over the 2 hour mark now. Councillor Wilding, Councillor Bowes, and the Mayor wants to come in as well. So Councillor Wilding.
Yeah, I really like what you were suggesting, Chair, about the transition idea of somehow mashing stuff together in a way to the benefit of all parties, or the two main parties, if you like. I know the City Council probably feel at the moment they haven't been offered enough time to organise doing the things they need to do in order to see whether they can afford to do it. But so one of the things I'd like to see is that the County Council agree to give them more time, but also that there's a transition period during that, so that during that time, while they are looking at things, somehow they're given the opportunity to be able to crowdfund and to do other things. There's got to be some kind of mash-up here that will benefit both parties.
And my point was for the Herefordshire Council to acknowledge that there's some financial liability in restoration work that needs to be acknowledged in order for it to be fit and at least part fund the cost of restoration. Because I know we're talking about maintenance and repair, but for me, if there are key aspects of the building that are failing and crumbling, it is a restoration cost. And that is exactly what we're looking at, not replacing an office door for an office door, but replacing and restoring key historic features of a building that need to be addressed because it's a listed building. So thank you for that, Councillor Wilding. Councillor Bowes.
Thank you. I think I would agree that the City Council needs to be given time, but I also think we can't carry on this for another 20 years. So I think we need to put in there a date in time where an agreement has to be reached, even if it's in a year's time, but we can't carry on just doing the same thing for another 20 years. So I would agree they do need time and we need to give them a realistic time, but then we do need to put a deadline on it. I think maybe the letter of comfort that the officer mentioned to help get crowdfunding and things would be a benefit to the city. And I also think we do need to look at costs and how we match or help in some way, but we also have to be very careful that not every resident wants to pay that cost because they're from, you know, a different area and they're already paying that. So I think we need to be very mindful of that.
Okay, thank you. We'll just go to Councillor Stevens and then it'll be Councillor Summers. Or are you responding to that?
No, just this. Perhaps I can go before if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Because I was in the building, was being shown around.
Yes.
There's one beam in that building that will not take much more weight, and the front is going to collapse. And I think that's one of the things that we need to be looking at as a transition beforehand, so that's fixed now rather than wait another 6 months to a year, because I'm not sure if it'll last that long. There's very little left of it.
And can I go back to the point that when the leader of the council was asked to put forward their comments, his comments, his challenge to this committee was, if the council is going to do any more works financially to the building, where's this money coming from? So, you know, there is the borrowing opportunity, there is the putting it as a capital project, borrowing it that way, public loan board, that type of thing. So there are possibilities to address the immediate restoration issues. But thank you for highlighting that specific piece of damage that needs addressing. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Just to pick up, you obviously asked a question of the legal representative. And I'll go back to something I said earlier in the... obviously, when we were in negotiations after the 2019 survey, we asked the question, would the conservation officer confirm that the building complied with its listed status? It came back no. So that's when we then further asked the question, if we were taken on the building, but anybody taken on the building, would Herefordshire indemnify us or any future owner against the risk of having to do works to be backdated to a listed status? That's clearly not right. Because, yeah, you cannot sue yourself, basically. If it was somebody else owning the building, you may well sue them and make them do it. Regarding council tax liabilities, fully get that. But just to make you aware, if you're not aware, you should be aware, the City Council, as part of their Stronger Towns bid, are bringing free electric buses to the city. Not really free, obviously, because there's a revenue cost to that. So obviously, we've agreed to look at that for the next 3 years to maintain those buses to be free as part of that Stronger Towns bid that's ongoing. Working smart has been mentioned several times. The scaffold that was beautifully put up for Councillor Davis's wedding was up for approximately 2.5, 3 years because the canopy was falling off the front of the building. Why during that period were other works at the front of the building not done? If you had paid for a scaffold at home, you would do everything as quickly as possible while you were hiring that scaffold. And there's ongoing issues currently with the two balconies that are at the front of the building, with drainage coming from that, that is causing water ingress into the TIC and the bid offices. And that's just a constant battle that I regularly speak to Councillor Davis about, and I don't understand, it's not my council. I'd be pretty annoyed if it was my council, why these works are not done sooner and quicker when you've got damage being caused on a regular basis to a building.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Right, I'm conscious of the time, and obviously, if we can go to John, we've got a list of recommendations that we've obviously hammered out as we've gone. I think it's important to go over those recommendations now. Obviously, committee members feel free to ask any questions, but I think it's important we just recap and see what those
I'm sharing the right documents.
Recommendations are.
Sorry, those are my draft notes. Let me stop sharing those. Right. Please interrupt. I'll try and get it as large on screen as possible. Can people see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the first recommendations that was formed was as an immediate maintenance step, sorry, there's a word missing there, dehumidifiers are placed in the town hall to reduce, mitigate any immediate health-related issues.
Yep, that's the Summers point, right up for starting blocks.
A second recommendation was this decision should not be taken in isolation, but should be brought together with all of the council's listed buildings within the asset review that was mentioned by, I believe, Councillor
Stark.
Councillor Stark, I believe. The council consults further with the residents as part of the current budget consultation, which I think was Councillor Harvey's proposal that if we did further consultation, it probably fitted best with the budget consultation. With the residents of Herefordshire to explain the costs of maintaining our council buildings and to invite their views as to how the council should look to manage its estate of council buildings.
Yep.
I'd
Just say, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
we do also have an obligation as councillors to make decisions on behalf of our residents. We mustn't put all the onus on the residents only. That's sometimes forgotten, I think, as being perhaps obscured.
Yeah, but we're here to represent
We
their
are
views.
here to represent their views and all their feelings, yes.
Yeah.
But we have all the consultation that you like, but in the end, it's down to us to make the decisions.
I think the conundrum here is that the issue has been consulted upon in the past, but it's always consulted en bloc with everything else. And I suppose the question to put to perhaps this committee or put to the executive is, if members of the public were asked a specific question about, if we do not do this, the fate of this specific building may be put in doubt in terms of its use, then maybe that might sharpen people's focus.
I think you've got to give them the background on which they can answer the question.
But I also think you've got to give them the financial implication of it. It's no good just saying, you know,
That's all part of it, isn't
yeah,
it?
you've got to say this will affect your council tax by X amount of pounds per
Yeah.
household.
Yeah, that definitely needs to be part of the consultation.
This recommendation, Councillor Davis gave some helpful clarity on as part of the deliberations of the committee, but a recommendation was proposed that clarity is given on exactly which elements of the town hall building is proposed for disposal, if the open market sale or a community asset transfer is the recommended option. Councillor Davis appeared to give that clarification, but forgive me if I've got this wrong, Councillor Davis, that the town hall disposal would include number 8, the car park and the garage, but would not include parts of the car park adjacent to number 10.
So clarification,
Thank you.
the mayor said the wrong details, and actually it's 10, number 10 and the town hall. So reverse it, so where we say the adjacent to, it's the adjacent to number 8, but it's not town hall in number 10.
Thank you.
And I think that the point that Councillor Rowan was making is, could you sell off number 8, pay for the restoration works of the town hall to make it a more of a property in a better fixed state to hand over to the community? That was the point I think you were making.
Yes, parts of I just didn't want the whole details of the asset transfer to then become the sale particulars.
Yeah.
As I said, a bit of blue sky thinking about what can be done with it. You can look at a large piece of land or a large building and ancillaries, and sometimes it will have an X value, but split up and into different parts, it has a higher combined value. So it's really just a case of having a thought, because it's something that we could just step into. Oh, that's the bit we were transferring, so that's the bit that's going to go up for sale.
I think you've also got to consider what the effect of hiving off those different buildings would have on the total use of the original building, the centre building.
We've got experts on that, Councillor Rowan, so yeah, I'm happy for that to come back.
Forgive me, I didn't quite catch that secondary part of the recommendation, but it seems to suggest that as part of the sale, the proceedings of the sale are then used to address some of the maintenance.
But we sold one of the buildings at the time.
So if you sell number 8 and you raise some revenue because of that, you can invest that in restoration of the town hall to meet some of the cost of making the building serviceable to then hand over to a community interest company. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's. But there's no. I can't remember who said there were officers working in that part. But I mean, there's no emotion involved in selling just and addressing Snow Inn Street. You start saying the town hall, and possibly there would be.
Okay, so an issue that needs exploring.
I don't think it would be. I think it would be advantageous to look at it and say, that bit go up for sale, and so therefore the proceeds from that sale would then go towards the bigger picture in keeping the city council in the town hall and help with the works associated.
I think it also, as I said before, you've got to think of the consequences. Sending that bit off from the town hall, will that affect the use of the town hall or its viability?
I think you'd benefit going and having a look, Sebastian.
Yeah, well, I have it.
Okay, Councillor Summers.
Number 8 is the one to the right of the Shire Hall, is that correct?
Yeah.
At the town hall.
Town hall, yeah.
Scratch my.
Okay, so recommendation to explore that possibility.
Change that to explore the possibility of that as part of the site.
It is explored.
Explore the possibility of selling number 8 separately.
Okay. I will tidy that wording up, but hopefully that covers the gist of what you were hoping.
Yep.
A further recommendation, Councillor Byrne, I believe, proposed this, was that whatever the form of the disposal is, it is stipulated that the town hall remains open for public use. This seems to be the main recommendation coming out from the last passages of discussion. Yeah, the council support financially the city council in assisting with their plans to set up a community interest company or a charitable incorporated organisation. I think that was the ICO that was referenced in their pursuit of ownership of the town hall.
Yeah, that's the transition recommendation.
And part A of that is that rather than have a hard deadline for a decision, the council agrees to a suitable transition, time-limited period to help deliver and secure the asset transfer. And B, that the financial costs around ownership and maintenance must be built into the Hereford City Council's preferred ownership model. There was, I think, a recommendation partially formed, but I'd like to just check that with the committee, that there was a request that the differences of opinion around the current liabilities or maintenance costs of between 1.8 and 6 million are clarified, and we get a clear resolution on that in terms of what the position is.
Yes, that was my.
Do we need to go back to the financial?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, because we've still got to address the issue about precepts and contributions and things like that, which is a difficult one to capture, but let's try. The Councillor Stark's point is, of course.
I mean, John, it's the fact that it shouldn't just be the county that has to bear the whole cost here, that the city council needs to look at how it can contribute through its precept towards a successful transition or asset transfer, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Okay.
Do we really need to clarify which council, whether it's the city or the county there, because it just says the council?
Yeah.
So do we need to say the city support financial?
And the district council, to be precise.
I mean, it's up to the city council whether they can go along with that or not, but at least we in the committee have recognised that we have residents elsewhere.
Yes, absolutely, who are contributing
who
to,
would be concerned about always paying twice as it were.
who are contributing to their own local civic buildings through the precept.
So the recommendation would be then that the city council support financially their plans to set up a community interest company or charitable incorporated organisation.
With no help from the county council then? That's implied. I thought in the first place we were suggesting that the county council should help support the city council in this enterprise.
I think there's different ways of support. There's like the letters of comfort and there's giving them help with grants. But I think that the issue is at the moment we haven't got all of that money to support them, and why should all of Herefordshire pay for that particular building? Because it isn't just going to be that building, is it? We've got lots of listed buildings.
Will that come down to the legal aspects at the end of the day?
Yeah.
What the county has to do
Yeah,
to
we do
fulfill
legally,
their obligations?
yeah.
I think we've got to get that established first.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So that's down to legal obligations.
Yes, because we have to separate. There's two clear issues here. One, helpfully highlighted by Councillor Stark, and that's that, you know, any contribution that Herefordshire Council makes to the restoration of the building or upkeep of it and maintenance, that funds would be directed for the benefit of Hereford citizens, for want of a better way of expressing it, whereas other council taxpayers are paying for their own through the precept of other civic buildings, and it's getting that fair balance. The other side of that coin, of course, is that Herefordshire Council is the landowner and has responsibilities as the landowner to maintain their building in a way that is appropriate for its listed status, which is the legal issue that Councillor Summers was alluding to, and I think Councillor Bowen as well. So it's that balance of responsibilities that this committee, I think, is helpfully trying to say there are responsibilities that this council has and responsibilities to ensuring equitable funding for dealing with the issue to the taxpayer. Yes,
we're leaving it to the negotiations to decide how they actually then do contribute together to a final solution.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that this should be financial contribution.
We want to put that position clear on the table, that we don't think it should necessarily just simply be county taxpayers.
We could leave it like that, and maybe at the end of where it says in their pursuit of ownership of the town hall, we could put comma acknowledging the county's legal responsibility or something.
Yeah, financial responsibility and legal.
Allowing for.
Allowing for.
Okay.
I think my remarks about finding out the legal position is absolutely key.
That's why we
anywhere else. I really think that's we put almost in front of the whole thing.
Well, in actual fact, I don't necessarily think it's the legal position. It's the planning position as being a custodian of a Grade 2 star listed building, and it's the Planning Act that has the Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act that has requirements of a landowner to ensure that the building is kept up to.
We have officers in charge of that type of listed buildings, as far as I know, because I've had dealings with some of my planning applications. So we should be asking them the question.
Allowing for
that is all legal position.
Yeah, well, establish our responsibilities as the landowner for a listed building. Councillor Stevens, Councillor Stevens, you wanted to come in.
Get a bit tangled up by the same event with the wording and stuff. So obviously the City Council support financially. So you want the City Council to support financially the plan to set up a community interest company, CIC or a CIO. I think we'd plan to do that anyway. So did Encore. So I don't think that needs to be in there, because surely that's up to us to do, because we'd be taking the building on. But thank you. If you want to pay for it, fantastic. The issue, the hard deadline is a problem, because setting up CIC, CIOs is taking a long time at the moment. And discussions with Councillor Davis, we've been given some deadlines to January. I'm not convinced that January is long enough. I don't think to set up CIC, CIO. In discussions that we've had with rural media, and we're going to have some with HFOS shortly.
Chair, can I just ask a question on that? Surely if you've been in discussion with Encore to set up a CIC or a CIO, you're already part way down the process. So why not?
No, because Encore, in those discussions, Encore already is CIC and a charitable organisation. So they were going to be the landlords and we would simply be tenants, but we'd have a partnership working. So no, we didn't need to because they were already a CIC and a CIO.
So the City Council haven't done any work on setting up a CIO today?
No, we haven't because we didn't need to.
But they pulled out.
They pulled out. So that's what left us back as snakes and ladders square one again.
But I think then we need to look at putting a provision in so that going forward, you've always got a backup plan, because just to rely on one organisation is very dangerous.
Well, that was the only organisation that was put forward.
But you would also look at yourselves as a city council. Okay, if that doesn't happen, are we partway down the process?
The reason we didn't, we have a 15-year lease, so why should we be concerned?
Because you want the building.
But we're there for 15 years anyway.
Yeah, but you want the building.
We do,
permanently.
yeah. But the solution at that time, put forward by Councillor Davis, was on-call. So we looked at the way we needed to do it and thought, hang on, we don't need to do this twice, it's already in situ. So that's just the way it was working, and it all went swimmingly. And then it came to a point where it was like, actually, there's this huge liability. It would bring that organisation down.
But I think that to January is giving you 5 months, and that will fit in with our...
It does, but CICs and CIOs are taking longer than that to set up. That's the problem.
Okay.
I can assure you that they are, because in another capacity I'm doing it, and we've been doing it for nearly 18 months now.
Okay, but let's not lose sight of the fact that this committee is putting forward a recommendation to the executive, and its suggestion is to give more time and to agree what financially the council can do to restore the building so that it's in a position where the city council may feel that they're in a position to take on the liability eventually when some of the main issues are addressed.
Okay, but we're not saying here that the county council will financially pay to set up the CIC, which I think
That's
the mayor
looks like today.
Yeah. So sorry, it's not a question of the cost of setting up a CIC. Okay. It's a question of, if a CIC is created to take on the liability, is it going to take on the liability of the building that's got millions of pounds worth of works to be done, or is Herefordshire Council going to meet them halfway or some way clear to addressing the maintenance liability issues?
But I think we're only going to do that under the legal or planning obligations, is what because Councillor Stark's suggestion all along is we can't contribute everybody in Herefordshire, so we'd only have to do what we're legally obliged to do. Yeah. That's how I interpret it.
And residents in Herefordshire would accept that.
Yes.
I would go along with that community asset transfer.
But that would be a separate recommendation.
No, because
or build it into that.
Because what we've got to be careful of is that doesn't give the impression that Herefordshire Council will financially support half of the process. We'll only support the process where we're paying under our obligations. That there will be no more than that. That's
okay.
How I...
So is that clearly understood?
Okay, so should the CIC stroke CIO is created?
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. That's a fair outcome.
So
its liabilities, Herefordshire Council will accept its liabilities.
Yep. In accordance with advice from legal and planning officers, legal and planning advice.
Where's property services? That we can be.
You could put legal and relevant officers.
Yeah.
Yeah, property that put together. There's property services.
Specifically financial liabilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to say property services.
Is it and property services at the end? Planning, legal and property services.
I think that would be a good addition, yes, I think.
Okay. Councillor Stark.
Yeah, as you know, Chair, I raised 5 questions about the way the property strategy has been taken forward. I don't want to burden members with this meeting because it's a look back rather than a look forward in terms of maybe lessons to be learned. Perhaps, John, you could forward it just simply to officers to actually answer those questions.
But Councillor Stark, I know there were 5 points that you raised, and we won't go through them, but would you want to put a recommendation now about any type of strategy moving forward that should include something?
Well, I can't do that until I get the answer to the questions.
Okay.
We could say that the council reviews and updates its corporate property strategy, one step.
Or even your point at the very outset of the meeting to focus on listed buildings because they're the ones that.
I think listed buildings are different from the rest of the property portfolio. We discovered that in Ross, that you have to put far more effort and far more consideration and far more planning and maintenance into listed buildings than you have to do into a building which isn't.
So then would your recommendation be something like, and the council do a review of all of its listed buildings and
perhaps it needs a strategy for it, a separate.
Separate
strategy for listed buildings.
A review, to create a strategy for the maintenance of listed buildings.
Listed buildings,
Can we add that as a recommendation, please? Because it's important to have lessons learned about the ongoing future of buildings, not just this.
Now, Chair, if I get answers to the other questions that do have relevance to this debate, can we put recommendations in
retrospectively?
Post the committee meeting?
Well, not if we need to make a vote on them now, but I mean, I think this matter is going to get reviewed as we go on, and so there'll be.
I could raise it at another meeting.
I think so. Yes,
as an extra recommendation.
Yes.
I think we should.
And also, we're going to get the response from the executive on these recommendations.
Anyway,
so it could be.
Or could be done as part of the update on the recommendations.
Yes.
Because
Councillor Summers.
Well, we do have another disposal issue coming up in September at Hall Lacey, and then that might become listed by then, so it might come up again. Okay.
And it could be that the policy says listed buildings and any potential listed buildings.
Okay, so that recommendation, as I think I've heard it, is the council reviews and updates its corporate property strategy to include a separate strategy for its listed buildings.
Great.
Straight to the point.
Any other recommendations?
Just to check, Councillor Wilding's points about Banksy, just to check that wasn't a formal recommendation.
I was going to bring it up. Actually, in a way, it's covered by the mayor's suggestion that they might be incorporating art into the building. I just think perhaps they need to look a little wider with a grander scale than your ceramic man, who my wife has been involved in ceramics all her life, knows all about him, but he might not have the draw that someone else might have. So the answer is no, you don't need to put it back.
Thank you. That glass tunnel just.
Actually, no. I'd like to include it, and then I'd like to see the council vote it down. Or the committee vote it down.
You might not be. Where's Hereford?
You'll go to Hartford and do it.
Yeah, Hartford. I always confuse it. I used to live in Hertfordshire. Because Hartford's a county town of Hertfordshire.
Yes.
So Chair,
there's a T in it.
There's a little bit of wordsmithing I'd quite like to do with the recommendations. Would it be possible to take a very short recess while I decide on those?
Yeah. How long do it?
No more than 5 minutes.
Okay, then 5-minute recess. Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we're now going to recommence the scrutiny meeting today, where we are discussing the disposal of the town hall in Hereford. And we've had a short recess to assess the recommendations that the committee has been working through today. And so can I ask that we just have a look at the recommendations as they are having been edited?
Okay, hopefully those are a bit more readable on screen for you now.
Yep.
So the recommendations as captured. As an immediate maintenance step, dehumidifiers are placed in the town hall to mitigate any immediate health-related issues. Number two, this decision should not be taken in isolation, but should be brought together with all of the council's listed buildings within the asset review. The council consults further with residents of Herefordshire as part of the current round of budget consultation to explain the costs of maintaining our council buildings and to invite their views as to how the council should look to manage its estate of council buildings. Clarity is given on exactly which elements of the town hall is being proposed for disposal, if open market sale or community asset transfer is the recommended option. As part of the asset review, exploration is given to the possibility of selling number 8 separately, with the proceedings of the sale being reinvested in the restoration of the town hall to make it a more viable as a community asset transfer. That whatever form of the disposal is, it is stipulated that the town hall remains open for public use. If a community interest company or charitable incorporated organisation is created, Herefordshire Council will accept its financial liabilities in accordance with legal, planning and property services advice, and that rather than have a hard deadline for a decision, the council agrees to a suitable transition, time-limited period to help deliver and secure the asset transfer. That the financial costs around ownership and maintenance must be built into the Hereford City Council preferred ownership model. And finally, the differences of views between Herefordshire Council and Hereford City Council set out within the condition survey estimates are revisited to establish a clear position on the backlog of financial costs of maintenance. And then finally, the council reviews and updates its corporate property strategy to include a separate strategy for its listed buildings.
Okay, Councillor Stark.
Can we go back to 7, John?
Yes.
And we've really captured this notion that Hereford City should also contribute to whatever financial impact there is in terms of the asset transfer. I don't think we have.
We just make it larger again, sorry.
It's not in there, John. It's not in there at all. It's as if it's all down to the county council and the county council transfers.
Councillor Byrne.
As far as it was 7, if a community interest company, charitable incorporated organisation is created, the Herefordshire Council will accept its financial liabilities in accordance with legal, planning and property service advice and so on. But it should be a bit wider than just if a community interest company or charitable incorporated organisation is created. This should be duty language.
But it's saying on B, it's saying that the financial costs around ownership and maintenance be built into the Hereford City Council preferred ownership model.
I was seeing HCC as Herefordshire County Council.
No,
City Council.
Yeah, perhaps we should.
I always call it HCC.
Yeah. So it's the District Council of Herefordshire versus Hereford City Council.
Just called Unity Council.
Yeah,
That's better, John. Thanks, John.
Okay, but I'm glad we've clarified that, because if there's any ambiguity, then
that's right.
That will.
Because I always call it HCC, the Herefordshire County Council.
And shouldn't Herefordshire Council, Unity Council, be stepping up to its obligation in the area?
But that's why you've got the first bit about in accordance with legal, financial, legal, and planning liabilities. Councillor Summers.
I just want to go back to that beam that's on the front, that's open and all eaten away. That needs immediate attention for the safety of everything, actually. That needs to be sorted somehow
Okay, so what about the 10th recommendation then, that any outstanding works that are
then you're opening up a can of worms.
Yeah,
because you
Chair,
don't
just
care.
mention the beam, not outstanding
Yeah.
works, otherwise you'll.
okay?
The beam is a problem right now, because if that collapses, the front of the building might collapse.
Okay, be specific. Mention the beam then. Yeah.
I just think also, catered all need to establish the legal position regarding the council and this list of buildings, and particularly the town hall.
Which is captured in
Just
7.
I know, it's like really specifically said that, but you're talking about the community interest company or the other thing, but it doesn't say if none of those are going forward at the moment, shouldn't we be stepping up the place at any rate?
Well, that if after so urgent maintenance of the beam be addressed.
Yeah, along with the dehumidifiers, that could go along.
But
with
that's
that.
already in.
I know, but that could go together, because it's still, you need those dehumidifiers in to start drying the place out before you start working there.
I think it'd be best to have separate recommendations. And then if we go back to 7, just to with recommendation 7, we've assured Councillor Stark that it's the wording he wants, but Councillor Bowen is just a little bit more concerned that it's not explicit enough about the council's responsibilities.
Altogether, yes. And not just opposite City Hall,
It says,
but all this list of buildings.
Septic fund, Heritage Council will accept financial liabilities in accordance with legal planning and property services.
Should that say must accept rather than will?
Or should.
Should is leaving it open.
Yeah. Must accept.
It depends what the legal obligations are. Once you find out the legal obligation, then you put a.
But that's what I've been saying all
Statement
along,
on
yes. We've got to know our legal obligations first.
Because we may not be legally obligated, it might be the part of the tenant or something, but we need to find that out first.
Yeah. So it should almost come first, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, any more recommendations? 10 is a good number, as good a number as any, but if there's any other pressing recommendations? Okay. Councillor Wiley, speak now or forever hold your peace. You don't want a Banksy resolution.
Well, I don't think anyone wants it, so.
Okay, right, okay. Are we all, seeing as that's the work of many hands and many contributions, are we all happy to vote for those en bloc?
Chair, just one point, sorry. There's a typo in 5, it should be proceeds of sale.
Proceeds of sale.
Should be just proceeds, not proceedings of sale.
Thank you for spotting that, eagle-eyed.
Can we go back to the very beginning? Just a quick. Should we look to manage its estate of council buildings? And at 3, second last line, their views as to how the council should look to manage its estate of council buildings.
So Councillor Barrow, can you just talk to
Sorry,
John?
Yes, and they've got John's got it right.
Sorry, Councillor Bay, so that was.
Just a minor detail, but
Yeah, it was just the missing 2.
Yeah, that's included now.
To manage its estate. Councillor Barrow. Okay, any further amendments or recommendations? No, if not, as I say, from the chair, I'd like to put that to the vote, to the committee. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That ends the item for today. I would like to thank all of those councillors who have contributed today, in particular Councillor Stevens, the Mayor of Hereford, and Councillor Polly Andrews. Thank you also to Councillor Gemma Davis for listening to all of the recommendations, and to officers for their recommendations. I just I'd like to confirm that the next meeting of scrutiny is on the 13th of September. Just like to thank you for today's meeting. Thank you very much. And can I now confirm that the live stream is now ceased, please?